Hello, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. Today is Sunday, October 28th, 2018, and I'm your host, Tracie Harris, and with me today is a special co-host, Reggie Ben-Ami.
Hi.
Who founded Haitian Freethinkers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll be talking to Reggie in just a few minutes. I have a couple of announcements. First, our normal announcement that the Atheist Experience is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a Texas nonprofit educational organization dedicated to promoting separation of church and state and positive atheist culture. I want to announce that after the show tonight, we won't be doing an after show because we're premiering Parenting Beyond Belief, which is our newest program that's going to happen right after the show today. Tonight is going to feature Claire Wilner, who you know from Godless Bitches, and also Janet Heimlich, who was on a recent Godless Bitches, and then also Mandisa Thomas, who everyone knows from Black Nonbelievers, and also her role on American Atheists. And later shows will feature Dale McGowan and Kendall Hopkins. In fact, they're going to be on next week's program. The show's regular format and regular programming is going to be live streaming on the second and fourth Saturdays of every month at 1 p.m. Central. So that's second and fourth Saturdays every month at 1 p.m. Central. And for people who are local, you can join us for dinner after the show at the ACA Studio and FREETHOUGHT Library on KOENIG. We are having tacos tonight, so it's Taco Sunday is what I was told. So we're looking forward to that. And I do have a couple more announcements for Atheist Community of Austin, which is that we are looking for volunteers for social media moderation and promotion. If you're interested in volunteering online, email socialmedia@atheist-community.org. And if you're interested in volunteering locally Austin for local events and community service, stop by the FREETHOUGHT Library during open hours or email Megan, MEGAN, @atheist-community.org. Additionally, we have a job posting out for Director of Operations, so we're hiring, and there is more information on all of our social media platforms. This has been posted and put out, and we also have this at our main website. I have been told that there should be links to the job description, or the job description itself will be included in the post. I understand that it's a pretty long job description, so if you're interested in that, if you think that you fit that bill, if you'd like to read more about it, check it out and see if it fits with you, or if you think that it does, and reach out to us in that event and feel free to apply. I also was asked to say that Matt is going to be on next week hosting, which is normal, and he's going to start with a correction and an apology for something that happened last week. So I don't have further information on that, but just to let people know, he wanted to announce that before another week had passed. So he was pretty feeling it, all right? So this is a sincere thing that he just wants to make sure people know he's going to do it. And then when he does it, I just want you to know that he means it. So that's everything I have, which is actually quite a lot, quite a mouthful. And so welcome again, Reggie. I'm so glad that you could come.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your work with Haitian Freethinkers and other things that you might be doing?
Okay. My name is Reggie, and basically I started a group called Haitian Freethinkers back in January of 2012, about 2 years after the earthquake that hit Haiti, and the one that Pat Robertson made his famous comments on about Haitians making the deal with the devil. So I decided that after going to a local atheist convention down in South Florida where I lived at the time, that I should do something to try to find other atheists who are Haitians like myself. I thought that it was going to be a challenge to find 10 Haitian atheists, but we've managed to pass that by a long shot, so I'm very happy about that. So, the group is just trying to basically do something kind of like what the ACA does, positive atheism, educate, be like an ambassador to the believing Haitians out there who don't even know that we exist because it's not really a thing in the community. So I try to do all that, yeah.
And what is the religious climate, what is the religious demographic in your view that you see in Haiti?
Well, based on my research, it's almost everybody's religious. the last pie chart that I saw had like a 1% slice for non-affiliated, not necessarily atheists or whatever. So we have a little bit over 10 million people living in Haiti right now. I think the diaspora number is at around 3 to 5 million all over the world. But pretty much everybody's religious, mostly Catholic because of our history with colonialism. Growing up, everybody knows about the African religion of voodoo, but when I was younger, it was used as a scare tactic. There wasn't anybody that I knew that came out and said that I practiced the religion, so I didn't hear too much about that. And when we migrated to Miami, my mother started going to like Protestant churches, and so eventually I became a Baptist. But most people are still religious down there, but since then I've discovered that there's a little bit more diversity now. There's pretty much every group that you can think of down there, and there are still people going to Haiti to proselytize based on looking at Haitians as people that need help for various things. So it's a field that still is very saturated with people that go proselytize, for various different denominations. So I'm trying to represent the secular aspect,
Right.
which is very, very difficult.
And what do you think about, because I know that you're familiar with being here stateside, and so this isn't like new to you. It's not your first time that you've been in the States. So what do you think is unique when it comes to what the atheist community is confronted with in Haiti versus maybe a place like here? You said you've been enjoying the culture here in Austin, and I know you've been in other places. I think you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you had like a military background.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you've traveled.
I've traveled.
Yeah. And so what do you think is unique to Haitian secular communities?
I think what's unique is that it's not. I'm not going to say it's not alive, because I know some members are in Haiti right now. It's just that, from my understanding, is that to gather and do things like we're doing, they have to have some kind of documentation with the government just to do like formal meetings, from what I heard.
Okay.
And so it's not a thing that is discussed as far as just knowing that it exists as an option, like I said before. So everybody thinks that, it's a new or strange concept. I don't know too many historical figures that we can say like, oh, this guy was in that secular realm and he's an author or he's a movie star, So I've been trying to do all that research to show that, this is not something new that other people do. Because there's a propensity for people to think that atheism is a older white male domain.
Wow, okay.
And so by showing that, we're regular people,
Right.
and Haitian, that, it's a thing that is possible, and we can demystify whatever questions that hopefully, comes along with that.
Right. So what you're saying is like we have icons that we can reach back to historically that are, atheist writers and thinkers, even if it's not a majority of people, like in the European tradition.
Right.
Whereas you're saying that, in the Haitian tradition, you don't have that sort of foundation that you can point to and say, hey, here's some great leadership that we had in the past in this. So you're dealing with kind of a fresher, newer environment, I guess.
It is. And I don't think that's as if it didn't exist.
Right.
But there's certainly
Not as prominently.
it's not as prominent. So
Right.
I heard that this guy named Jacques Romain was a author who espoused secular thoughts, but again, it didn't proliferate all throughout the culture.
Right.
So it's going to look as if it's a new thing, but it's okay because it has to start from somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just want to let people know, I did see your interview with Ariel on Fully Deconverted, and that was quite impressive. So if you're interested in hearing more about Reggie and what he's done and what he's doing, you can definitely tune into that. Again, the programming is called Fully Deconverted. That's the name of the podcast, and they do some series and some really great work. And just to say that your particular interview I thought was well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure thing. And we have callers.
Okay, so
And So let's go ahead then, and we will hit David in Miami, who says that he has proof that God exists and he believes that Judaism is the true religion. Hi, David. You're on with Tracie and Reggie.
How are you?
Good.
First, I want to say that my phone and the video I was watching it on is not on the same rate, so I can't see your hand gestures or anything like that. I'm talking to you on the phone.
All right.
Basically, I believe that Judaism is the true religion, and I already studied it for like a year, so I'm not so actually intelligent, but throughout this year, I did encounter like 7 different proofs. Obviously, I don't think there will be enough time for all of them today, but if there will be at least for like 3 of them, maybe I could call another week, and then I'll just say the 4. You know?
Yeah. Start with your start with your best one, and we'll work down and see where it goes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, so it's not 7 proofs, it's 7 types of proofs, meaning like there's examples for each. So
okay.
The first type of proof is like all the ones with nature. So basically, I'll give you an example. So in the Torah, it says that for so you know how there's like over 2 million different kinds of land animals, and there's a lot of different kinds of animals that live on land, and it says that in order for animals that live on land for it to be kosher for you to eat, it needs to have split hooves and it must chew its cud, like vomit and swallow it again, which some animals do that. And basically, it says that there's going to only be 4 animals that will exist that will have only one of the 2 signs. It will either have split hooves or chew the cud, and that will be like the pig, the hare, the rabbit, and the camel, I think. So it names the 4, and then after 3,000 years, no one is able to find another animal except for those 4 that only have one of the 2 signs. And I doubt that someone in the desert over 3,000 years ago without any computers would know something like that.
Okay, are you impressed by that?
I am really impressed. I don't really see that so much in other religions.
I see it in Islam. That's exactly what Muslims say about Muhammad. They'll say that the Quran said this, or but how would a man living 1,400 years ago know this about that? And then if you're not a Muslim, most of the time you're not impressed by it. I can think of several examples that they cite, but they say exactly the same thing for Islam. And I read the Quran just like I read the Bible, and I'm not Muslim, so. And also, that was supposed to be a mistake in the Bible. As far as I know, rabbits do not chew the cud. So that was something that I discovered when I was reading secular books. So you might want to look into that.
Oh, yeah, I'll look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at Carm. I'm just trying to see, because I had heard the same thing, but I wanted to sort of look it up at first.
And by the way, it's the same thing with the fishes. So in order for them to be kosher, it needs to have scales and fins. And it doesn't say it in the written Torah, but it says in the oral Torah that every fish that will have scales will have fins, and no one also could find a fish that has fins and not scales.
Okay, well, not everybody knows the difference between the written and the oral Torah. I learned about that in my studies. Can you tell the audience what is the difference between the written and the oral Torah?
So basically, the written Torah is the famous Old Testament that everyone knows, and it names 613 commandments. But you're not going to be able to know how to do any of the 613 commandments that are on there. It's just to keep the seventh day. But like, you're not going to really know how to do any of the technicalities or anything like that. So God taught the Jewish people, and and how to do all of the 613 commandments. And then after many, many years, the Jewish people started forgetting them, so they started writing them, and now we have it, and it's called the Talmud. It's the Gemara and Mishnah, and basically there it has the explanations of how to do the 613, which is not so famous.
Okay, where is God, and can he come to our show like right now?
It's just that if he does that, then the whole test of the world will. Then if God just shows himself to me right now, then
not to you. Can he come to the studio? Can he come to the studio where I am right now?
And reveal himself to you?
Yes.
He could. Yes.
So why don't you have him come?
Because then the whole test then there won't be no test.
Okay, wait a minute. What test? Because God revealed himself to people all the time in the Old Testament.
Yeah, God showed
So there is the test of faith is like a Christian thing. When you're talking about God and faith in God, it had nothing to do with faith in the belief that God existed in the Old Testament. Faith in God meant that you thought that he was faithful to his word, right? So the question of God existing was not a question in the Old Testament because he actually went and had dinner, I think, with Abraham, and he showed his back parts to, like, was it Moses? So God revealed himself to people, flagrantly in the Old Testament. He showed up just like a person at dinner. So my question would be, what test are you talking about? Because faith in God in the Old Testament had nothing to do with people not knowing whether or not God existed because he revealed himself directly.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, so I guess that doesn't make the difference, but I could give you some more evidences.
Well, I only asked that because for me, the best evidence is to show up. Like if Tracie and everybody who does this show and everything have been talking about some magical guy or somebody named Reggie forever, and I've had the opportunity to show up, and then now you can see me live, you can talk to me live. I think that's the best thing anybody can ask for, especially for someone that's supposed to be everywhere at the same time and has all this ability and power. So I don't think it's too much to ask to have him show up right now, and in that way you don't have to present 7 proofs or anything. We'll have the person in question and we can talk directly to him.
Yeah, when there was a question, I was looking it up to see, and it was in 1 Kings 18:13 where they have a contest, right? So there's a contest between the gods, and the Jews call down
Elisha?
Yeah, to come and burn up he burns up the altar. God burns up the altar, burns up the sacrifice, burns the soil, like just sends a fire that is out of control.
It was a whole pyrotechnic show. And Elisha was even talking smack to the priest of Baal.
Yeah, about how their God wasn't doing anything. So God of the Old Testament, God of the Jews, was not shy about showing himself.
Right.
And especially if there was like a request for a test, right? You don't see stuff like that until Christianity, where they're saying like, oh, you don't tempt God and you don't test God. And it's in the Old Testament, if you tested God, he came down and just kicked your ass right in front of everyone.
And in fact, there's a contradiction in the Bible, I think in Malachi, where Yahweh says directly to test them in reference to coming up with some financial goods or something to that. So besides all that, all I'm simply saying is that it'll be the best thing is to have him show up right here, right now. We have cameras, we have microphones. Why doesn't he do that? Or she?
So there's 2 things. So first of all, I will ask this question to my rabbi and see what he says, because every question I ever ask, they always answer me with a logical answer. But the second thing to this question is, just because he doesn't show up doesn't prove that it's not true.
Correct. But what I'm saying is, and the reason I brought up the king's example was because there's many examples of God showing himself, for example, to people that already believed in him. But this was an example where he actually showed up when asked by one of his faithful in order to demonstrate to people who thought, their God was the God, that he actually was the God. So this was him sort of demonstrating himself to people who were not believers and who were not his worshipers, and at the request of his prophet, he was willing to come down and show himself and demonstrate to them that he was real. And so I'm just kind of saying that, we have not only examples where he reveals himself straight up to his followers, but where he reveals himself to non-believers as well.
Do you know if he likes tacos? Because we'll have tacos supposedly
Tonight for dinner. If he wants to come for tacos,
so I know
he's
he ate
welcome.
with Abraham, so I don't know if it's kosher stuff and all that, but we'll try to accommodate him as best as we can.
Now, to be fair, he invited himself to dinner with Abraham, so I don't know if he accepts invitations.
Okay, so
but with the door is open and God is welcome.
Yeah, we'll work around the dietary pieces. So, and notice that you have to ask your rabbi and not ask your Yahweh directly. I think that should be a clue right there, personally.
But also, we can't have fire. We have restrictions.
Okay.
So he'd have to eat out in the parking lot.
Yeah, but we could work around that.
But I mean, we're just kind of being lighthearted about it. Please don't feel like we're, making fun of you or anything like that. We're just having a little bit of fun here.
Of course.
And so, let's see.
What about if I were to tell you that last week we went to China together and we had a great time, and then we went to Hawaii and we surfed, and then we just 5 minutes ago we just ran 2 miles together. Mm-hmm. You would probably say I'm crazy. That did not happen, and I'm assuming that if a guy just comes to a whole nation and says, by the way, you guys were just in Egypt, enslaved. You guys saw the 10 plagues, and then you saw the ocean split. And
wait. What? Okay, wait. I want to hold up because the whole Egypt Pharaoh story thing, I'm not sure is valid. I mean, that's a myth.
It's not valid. So let's say it's not. So let's say it's not true. So a guy comes to all these people because he wants to give this book and start this religion, and basically he says, all you guys, because the book says that the book is given to these people. So he says, hey guys, so you guys saw the ocean split. Your clothes are growing with you. You're getting food from the sky, and you don't even have to go to the bathroom with it.
Sure.
All of these things. Don't you think that all these people, this whole nation, will just say, "Please get out of here. You're crazy."
Right, but these are stories. Like that didn't happen. Right? I mean, when you go and look up archaeology, there's nothing to back up a story that should have some records and some other things that we would be able to find that would verify this. This isn't just like a small thing where maybe they talk about a minor miracle with Jesus where there might have been just a few people in a room that would have seen it. I mean, you're talking about millions of people traversing this desert for 40 years, right? And breaking out of Egypt in this really, very public way. And we don't have anything to demonstrate that story's real and not a myth.
And
exactly.
Right, but why would you say then that you think that this book is true?
No, exactly. If you come to me with that story, I'm going to answer you back with, I wasn't there, and I don't...
I'm not even saying I wasn't there. I'm saying that there should be some archaeological backup for this because it's a huge story that spanned a lot of time in areas of the world that did keep records. And they interacted with people.
Okay, then in the ocean, didn't they find, how when all the Egyptians drowned because of...
No, if you're don't bring up the chariot wheel because that's a hoax. Look into the chariot wheel thing and you'll find that it's not very good evidence.
Are you sure you haven't, are you sure that you haven't looked into Islam because they made some of the same claims, including this pharaoh that's supposedly been preserved from that same scene from the Bible. But regardless, even if all those things did happen, what's wrong with him showing up right now and having some tacos with us, with camera equipment, and just having a good old time?
Yeah, I'll ask. I really don't know.
Okay.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, hey, we're gonna go ahead and move on to some other calls, David.
Perfect.
But I want to thank you for your call. And yes, you are. As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to call back. I think you were very civil, and I think you expressed yourself honestly, laid out what you thought and what impressed you, what didn't, and I think that's fair for a call. So. Definitely feel free to call back if you have more to talk about or other questions or, questions as far as how do atheists respond to this or what do you think about that. I think that's the types of calls that we're looking for.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Sure, thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to go now to, let's see, we've got George in Tennessee who wants to know how atheists are going to respond to rapid advancements in artificial intelligence. Hey, George, you're on with Tracie and Reggie.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. I've been paranoid schizophrenic for about 2 decades, a long time. And as you guys know, the world has been changing drastically. And so on the internet, I've noticed a large population of targeted individuals and things. And it makes me think of, the mythological writer Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
He has a quote that aborted shamans are schizophrenics. And I wonder if aborted mystics, like people who are overcome with awe, who kind of maybe relate to awe as something sacred, that maybe in our times with all this omnipotent technology that can watch us and see us, if that creation of a deity, almost like a deity anyway, like that could greatly overwhelm civilization and perhaps return us back to like a certain stage of belief. And I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
This is an interesting thing because let me tell you, this went in a direction I did not expect. I was actually thinking that you were going to ask more about how does an atheist view something that is artificially intelligent in terms of like theists having sometimes concepts of things like soul, which would continue to differentiate, for example, a human being from any sort of artificial intelligence, right? And so I was thinking in terms of how would I look at that? And yet you kind of took it to a level of what if the artificial intelligence like got to the point where it was godlike? Is that correct expression?
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so if the artificial intelligence kind of took over and became the dominant force on the planet, like a giant dictator, or and I am assuming that.
Right. Yeah.
Now, are we assuming that it would be malevolent for some reason, or would it be benevolent?
Well,
does it matter? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, it's another reason why I was kind of thinking, because a lot of people have said, well, this technology would come out of us, so it'd be human, and so exactly. It's like the more that we're plugged in, the more loss of meaning that there might be in life for everybody. Because, the fruits are hanging higher now. Every day a new breakthrough happens. And every day we all have the same insights, just the eureka-like effect everywhere.
Well, just to kind of interrupt you for a moment, I'm in thinking about your question. I'm thinking of like old episodes of the original Star Treks where they actually had scenarios like this, right? Where people build a robot and then hundreds of years later, they forgot that it was a robot and now it runs the culture. I can think of 2 episodes right off the top of my head where they actually did that, where a computer ended up running the whole civilization and the people looked at it as a god, right? Like it actually was running things. There was one like the Will of Landru, I think it was, where they had a robot that sort of ran the society. And then there was another one that had to do with like an Eden-like scenario where the people lived in a garden and this dragon-headed doorway housed a computer that controlled the weather. And so it basically kept things in an Eden-like state, and the people were very, very like childlike in their perspectives on the world because they were taken care of. Now, those were just like 2 sci-fi scenarios where something like that occurred.
Scenarios, yeah. Okay. Well, I haven't seen those episodes. I'm very sorry.
They're old. They're old originals. So that's like.
Okay. Well, they sound very interesting. I love sci-fi. I take my own stab at a kind of world like that, but that's interesting. Yeah, Star Trek. Well, I never really tuned into it enough, but it's interesting.
I mean, it seems kind of dated now when you see the original episode, so it's like I'm going to apologize if you do go look it up just for the, the technical quality of it. But, I grew up with it, so I loved it.
Okay. Well, it's like the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. I love that movie. Just claymation.
I know what you're saying.
But sometimes sometimes it does something for the imagination and stuff. But,
so, Reggie, you have thoughts on this? Can you think of storylines or anything that you?
I would just deal with it as best as I could. If I knew that they were robots, then I would treat them like robots. I would not worship them. I don't see why. I would just deal with it as best as I can. I think a lot of times people ask questions with the preface, as an atheist, ... And I'm thinking to myself, like, what am I supposed to have, like a boxed response? Because a lot of times people treat us like, I guess, religious people because they feel like atheists will respond a certain way. But I would just do my best and survive. But, yeah.
I guess what he's saying is it would be like a non-human ever-evolving overlord that could overtake us as far as intelligence and capacity to the point that, could this thing become a god to people? And I think that's I don't think that's a bad question. I do think it's the realm of sci-fi. And I just thought of another episode where they did that, where there were people being transported on a spaceship, and it was taking so long for the ship to get where it was going that the people forgot that the ship was a ship. So they thought they were on a planet, but really they were encased in a ship. After generations.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and so
and that could happen.
What's funny is there's like a priestess. They have a priestess who interacts with the computer. Of course, she doesn't know that's what she's doing. And there's rules, like there's religious rules in the society. And one of them is you're not allowed to climb up and touch the sky, right? Because then there's a ceiling. So
it's a coincidence to me. Hold on, I got to tell you guys. I'm paranoid schizophrenic. And years ago, I got fired from a job because, and I have verification for this. I can prove it all.
I'll take your word on it.
Coworkers and stuff. Okay. And actually, I have a few coincidences have haunted me all my life. Some of them pretty potent. But in this one, I had a dream. I was driving over these hills, and there was a UFO. There was UFOs everywhere. They didn't bother anybody. Unless you could go up there. Actually, you could touch them in my dream, but you could not touch water. And in my dream, I walked into the water, and a lady came out of the water, and she was carrying a baby. And she handed me the infant, and when I touched the water, the UFO opened fire.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't laser, it was machine gun fire.
Okay.
And I thought, I've got to get to the bottom of what's going on here. So I handed the baby to a couple, and I ran into the woods. I guess disappeared into the forest. Well, the next day I was telling this to a friend of mine that I worked with at the donut shop. This guy who worked with me, every time I got to the lake, he said, yeah, the lady of the lake. I hadn't said anything yet. I said, yeah, that's right. And I said, then the UFO opened fire. And, well, I don't know if I used the term open fire, maybe I did. But he said, yeah, but it was machine gun fire, not laser. And I said, yes, how did you know that? He said, I saw it with my third eye, and they're all brown. Anyway, it really upset me.
I can understand why. And especially if you're living in a world where, you have no way to sort of, there's a book called, God, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's written by Kurt Vonnegut's son, Mark Vonnegut. And he battled schizophrenia and delusions.
It's very tough. And I will say that there is a lot of explanation for coincidences that are mundane. Like the 6 degrees that Magrum, or what, the scientists came up with, like the 6 degrees of bacon is what everybody...
Well, what struck me about his book was that he said one of the criticisms that were put out to him by editors, so they submit the book like the manuscript, and so the editors looked at it, and the people that they were asking to publish this book looked at it, and they came back and they said, we really like the story, but we are having difficulty sort of ferreting out which parts of the story are his delusions and which parts of the stories were things that actually happened. Mm-hmm. And Mark Vonnegut's response to that was pretty much, welcome to my world, right? That I can't fix that for you because I don't know. right? It's not like because I got better, I magically could go back and tell what happened in reality and what happened in my head.
Absolutely.
And so that's the
yeah.
thing, when you have these memories and you're saying like, and then this happened.
Hold on a minute. I got to tell you the rest of it, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
All right. So anyway, so I tried to count to 10. It didn't work. I flipped out. I actually went back to the back room, and I feel really terrible about this. He was a little bit smaller than me, so this didn't last long. But I pinned him to the table, and then I thought, my God, what am I doing? And then I asked him the usual schizophrenic questions. Are you an alien? Can you read my mind? And I said, you got to be very careful with these answers. And he said, no, I'm not, and I can't. And I let him off the table, and I turned around, and it was pretty tense in there. So I turned on the radio, the work radio. And the song that was playing on the work radio was Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. Which all that could have other explanations.
Well, it has meaning to you, right? It has meaning to you.
Definitely, right, and that kind of pins it down emotionally, you know, and it does. Now, on 2007, a movie came out on my birthday. It was 23, was Jim Carrey in it. And so, and my life is, and I imagine a lot of people's lives are like this. And maybe it's mathematical chance. It could be. And I've worked really, really hard trying to think of therapies, trying to discover all the reasons why coincidences happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a book, and I'm almost, I don't even, this, I guess, I don't know if it's appropriate to mention it to you or not, but Jung did one called Synchronicity. Jung wrote a book called Synchronicity, where he was super impressed by coincidence, and I really loved the book, and I loved his description of coincidence, which is a really an interesting thing to do, is ask people to define the word coincidence, because it's difficult to define, but he did a really good job of it. But the point is, with a coincidence, it's things that have meaning to you. Right? So if a song comes on and it has that title, it's kind of up to you to decide whether it's meaningful based on the event that just occurred or not.
Absolutely. You know, and if it was just music and song, I may not actually think too much about it. There's a lot of degrees, you know. It's like some coincidences. It's very soft stuff, not that.
Yeah, because the song comes on, and it comes on, and it comes on, and then one day it comes on in a situation where, hey, I just had somebody pinned down, and then this song came up.
It's kind of highlighted already emotionally.
Right, but all the other times the song comes on, you don't think anything of it because it's not in a situation where it's meaningful.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely, but. Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think it's very important that people keep that in mind, especially because things are becoming a lot more interconnected. And that isn't, you know, and I kind of think, well, that makes sense, because we live in a universe that started from one point. So why wouldn't it be connected bottom to top?
That was what Jung had to say about it. That was his thinking. I don't know if you've read Synchronicity, and I don't know if you should.
I'm familiar with his.
But if you do,
you know, but yeah, and but you know, and Carl, you know, and I kind of think, well, there's a lot of reasons underneath the surface and underneath the current for us to tie into things. And I try to remember that. And, you know, and I also try to think, well, now, you know, I don't know. But anyway, but it is difficult and it is overwhelming. And that, to me, it says, you know, and especially when people are losing maybe the hope, like in the animal kingdom, there's a principle called the handicap principle, where like animals will sometimes call to a predator bird, like a small bird might call to it. And that's to let the bird, the predator, know that it's aware that it's there. And another example, the one that's important to me here, is that stooting, I think they call it stooting. They jump up and down when predators are near instead of just taking off, like deers will do that if wolves are around.
Okay.
Or antelope, you know. And they do this to demonstrate their strength. Well, I kind of think that's happening to society. It's becoming stronger and stronger, like this gazelle. And then you have all these wolves wanting to find meaning in life, wanting to hunt it. But it's getting so strong. And so they're despairing. And you have people who want to become professional, like school shooters, terrible things like that. And you know, and I think it has a lot to do with that drive for meaning.
Or the lack of capacity to find
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Or the lack of capacity.
yeah, it's hard to say. I think that these are complex issues. And
Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
well, no, you're fine. I think we are going to move on a little bit, but I want to thank you for your call.
Okay.
Thank you for the call.
Yeah,
Well, thank you guys for talking to me.
sure. Thanks very much, George. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on, and we're going to take Robert in Austria, and you want to talk about secularity in Austria versus in the U.S. and presenting an argument against fine-tuning. You're on with Tracie and Reggie. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello. My name is Robert, but it's fine.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So, I think it's perfect that I called this week since you were talking about religion in Haiti and stuff. So, first of all, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been to church or attended a Holy Mass after you came out as an atheist?
I have.
I have.
Yeah.
And, like, how did you do it? Did you, like, participate in the singing? And did you eat the Holy Communion?
No, I haven't done communion because out of respect, because my understanding is that communion is like a believer's thing. That if you're a believer, that's kind of what you do, and so I see this as something that really I shouldn't do if I'm not a participant in their faith. Singing songs, I did participate in the singing because as far as I know, everybody's welcome to sing along if the whole church is singing, if the whole congregation is singing. So I participated in the parts that I was aware were open to the public, and I declined to participate in things that I was raised to understand that only members participated in.
Okay. And about you, Reggie?
Yeah, I still get invited to churches. I go whenever I can. I don't have no problem going. Been to a lot of mosques. I've gotten into the Hindu temples that's around where I live. I think it's great as far as the art and how the temple got put together. So I find that stuff to be very fascinating. So I don't have a problem going to those places and participating whenever possible.
Okay, I was wondering about that. Thanks for the answer. So, about me, like the majority of people in Austria, I was raised as a Catholic. I was baptized as a baby, confirmed at the age of 14. And like most people around here, my family only went to church twice a year, at Eastern.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I always had this question and never get satisfying answers. So one day I just realized I don't believe, and so I went and, signed the papers to leave the church. So no big deal.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, the thing is, I still visit churches, for the big events in my Christian friends, baptism, weddings, and funerals. And
sure.
Yeah, like you, I don't participate in singing because I cannot stand behind the words. I don't want to sing words that I don't believe in.
Ah, okay.
And like I'm not praying, I'm not doing the cross, I'm not eating the bread. I don't know how you call it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, communion.
The communion, yeah. And I'm not sure how other people reacted to you, but like here, nobody talks about religion, and nobody talks to me when they saw that I didn't participate or something. Did people react to you not participating in certain stuff?
No. You mean like people at the church when I didn't take communion?
Yes, something like that.
No, I mean, they just sort of offered it to me, and I sort of indicated the next person should go.
Okay.
So things like that. And I'm trying to think. We also went to a mosque, but that was not really a religious service. Like we attended for some courses that they were offering on like Islam 101. So that was just kind of a get to know, kind of a meet and greet thing. But I mean, it was interesting. Like the church that I did go attend was a Baptist church, and I was not raised Baptist, but I was raised conservative Christian, which I thought meant that this would be all old hat to me. But when I got there, they did some things that I was just like, oh, that is completely uncomfortable for me in a church. And afterwards, Matt was there, and he had grown up in the Baptist church, and he was just like, nah, that's really normal, like, for Baptists. And I was like, oh, yeah, no. Like, they did this thing where they hugged each other. Like, you turn around and you hug each other. And I was like, oh, no.
Okay.
No, I'm not up for, like, hugging a stranger in a pew. Like, that's just weird to me. But that was, I guess that's something that some churches do. And, you know, I guess it's community. When you know everybody, it's probably far more comfortable than when you don't know anyone and you're like hugging a stranger. So there was, you know, some stuff like that where I was sort of glad that I was there with some people from ACA, so that I was just like, I'm going to hug a person I know here because I don't know these other people.
Okay, so maybe I imagine it a bit more strict and stuff because of some of your callers or what you get from the media, from the, what are they called, Southern Baptist Church?
Oh, yeah, the Southern Baptists are very, very conservative. I mean, but if you show up in their church, they're going to be hospitable, right? Because they want you to come back. So everyone's going to be nice to you when you go into the church.
But Catholics also have a bad reputation as far as I heard.
I think the only Catholic services I remember going to was when I was very little. So I was a child the last time I went to a service. Now, I've been in Catholic churches, but the last time I went to a service, I just remember it being very quiet and very ritualized. So it wasn't casual, right? And I thought, you know, like the churches that I went to, there was a particular way that you dressed, but in the Catholic Church, it was very structured, like severely structured. And even the singing, I mean, it might be wrong, but it was like there was a choir, or I don't remember us singing. And I remember there was a lot of, you know, like the whole standing, kneeling, sitting, like whatever. And I was not used to it because I wasn't raised in it. And so I was just kind of brought as a child. I just sort of did what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, and when I had to go to church, you always look at the old ladies because they know that, and then you kind of cheat and watch what they do.
Right.
So maybe I imagine it to be more strict in the USA, or I can tell you another story, and you can tell me if that sounds unusual.
Okay.
Like my cousin asked me to be her best man, and neither she nor the priest had any problem with me not believing. And they even asked me to read one of those prayer thingies, intercession.
Okay, did you?
Yes, I picked one which had no mention of.
You got to pick. You got to pick it. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
And I picked one. I can't remember. I don't know what I read, but it had nothing to, or not much to do with God or the afterlife.
No, that's fine.
And nobody had a problem with me not believing, and I was
They wouldn't have a problem here either. So, for example, if you were asked to participate in a wedding party and your friend is religious, the pastor's not going to care.
No, I mean, I was the best man.
I don't think they would care. Now, see, here we do have something, you know, like godparents. And so if you're asked to be like a godparent for a child, you have to stand up and say that you're going to raise that child in the faith and stuff like that. So some people are like, I can't be a godparent because I'm not going to take your kid to church if something happens to you. But so they don't want to get up and you know say what they need to say in order to become a godparent. So they would probably be more aligned with like becoming a guardian or something like a legal guardian, but they would not be able to promise people publicly that they were going to raise a child in the church. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
But that's more them. I mean, I think that if an atheist did get up and just say all that stuff and then later didn't do it, I don't think anyone's going to say you can't be the godparent. I mean, it would just be like you got up and lied.
Yeah. I see. Okay, so that was more personally about me. So to give you a better picture of my country, Austria, like 60% of the population are Catholics, but 30% of the people don't believe in any God, and that number is rising.
That's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty high compared to here.
Yeah, but like on the other hand, the standard greeting, which I hear like 90% of the time when I enter a shop or when I meet anybody which I'm not on a first name basis on, the greeting is greet God or greetings from God.
Huh, interesting. That's very narcissistic greeting. Greetings from God. Let me offer them from myself.
like that, I hear that like literally all the time, multiple times a day.
That's an interesting greeting.
And also we have like a cross in each classroom. We had Catholic classes in school, like in the regular classroom, 2 hours a week from 6 until the age of 18.
Right.
But that's only the one side. Like the other side is the classes are voluntarily, but as far as I know, nobody cared if you participated or not. Nobody talks even about religion around here.
Well, I have a question though. I want to know, like, what was your impression? What did you expect to hear? Because you seem surprised by the answer. So, what is it that you envisioned based on stuff you've heard about?
I know that that people talk more about, or that that it would be a bigger deal to join a mass without believing.
Now, I think here the problems that arise when somebody is open about their non-belief have to do with people that are in communities where maybe everybody doesn't know they don't believe, right? So if you live in an area in the United States that is very, very religious, and you can't be out because people won't want to be won't want to acknowledge you as family, won't want to be friends with you. Your teachers might actually be biased against you and treat you badly if they find out you're an atheist, or you might lose clients or lose your job. Now, it's illegal to fire somebody if they're an atheist, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't do it and get away with it. It just means that it's against the law, but I'm sure that it would be an easy thing to do. All you'd have to do is find some excuse to fire somebody and then just fire them and say that was the reason. So if you lived in a community like that, the problem wouldn't be having an open atheist in your marriage ceremony. It would be that the person who's being invited to be your best man, who is an atheist, probably wouldn't tell anybody that he was an atheist. He'd probably just go and pretend to be religious like he does all the time.
I think that's probably the thing I have a hard time to understand, because I didn't came out to anybody because nobody talks about religion.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure of my friends who believes in a God, who believes in a Christian God, who believes in no God.
There are areas of the United States that are just like that. And then there's other areas of the United States that are not like that at all. So it just depends on where you live. And in some places, people talk about religion a lot and they care a lot. Like there are areas of the United States where the first person, in the initial conversation someone has with you when they meet you, they're going to say, "Where do you go to church?" So you move into a new place, or you're going to be there over the weekend. Where do you go to church? You want to come to church with us? That's like opening conversation. But then there's other areas of the country where it's like you're saying and nobody even cares.
Okay. I mean, one last point I wanted to mention. Like also, even with the whole church and school and stuff, politicians never mention God or anything.
Oh, they do it here on across the board, so it doesn't even really matter which politician you're voting for. They're all going to pay some homage to God.
Yeah, no, so. I don't even know the denomination of most of my politicians. I had to do some research to even know who is a Christian and who is not.
Yeah, they pretty much all have. I mean, we thought we were really getting something when I think I remember Obama talking at one point, and he said something about people of all faiths and people of no faith, and my head almost just like blew up with, like I couldn't believe what I just heard, because nobody says that. So to hear a politician, especially the president, actually even acknowledge that atheists exist in this nation and are an included demographic was huge. Was a huge thing, because we're not usually even acknowledged.
So would you prefer it if it was like here, where they don't acknowledge atheists like in particular, but they don't acknowledge religion either?
Okay, so where you live, are there a lot of religious people trying to make people live religious lives using your government and laws?
No.
Yes, then I would rather that we be like you. I would like us to be more like that, yes.
Like, I mean, I couldn't even imagine talking about creationism before I saw your show.
Okay.
I didn't even believe that was a real thing. So.
Yeah, welcome to the U.S.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think I learned a little bit.
Okay.
And the second thing I wanted to talk to you, if I have a little bit of time.
Sure, give us a quick one.
Yeah, you get a lot of arguments about fine-tuning, and I wanted to give you a counter-argument because I think when you talk about the puddle, I think it's really fun, but you don't address the probability, and most callers insist on the probability. And my analogy would be, if you roll a regular die, the odds to roll a 6 are 1 in 6, right?
Sure.
But if I peek at the die, and I tell you, the number is even. Now you would say the probability that die has rolled a 6 would be 1 in 3.
Okay.
So my point is that information can change the probabilities.
Sure.
Or the other story, if you read the headline of a newspaper, man finds lottery ticket in the streets. What would be the probability that this lottery ticket is the big winning ticket?
I guess.
Go
ahead. I was going to answer, but go.
Yeah, no, it's probably higher than 1 in a million, because why would it be the newspaper article?
Oh, okay. So you're saying that if you read it in the paper, that would be an indicator that it was a winning ticket?
Yes.
Yeah, because why would they report on somebody finding a losing ticket in the street? No, I understand.
Exactly.
Okay, I wasn't really looking at it from that perspective, but now I understand what you're getting at. Yes.
So my point is, in the fine-tuning argument, the whole story starts, we are all sitting here in this world, and what are the odds that this world exists?
Pretty high.
You can't watch it in a vacuum. It's like if I peek at the die and I tell you, hey, the number I see is bigger than 5. What are the odds that it's a 6? It's
Sure.
100%.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So yeah, do you do you like that argument? Will you use it, or will you stick with the puddle, or do you see a flaw?
Well, I mean, I don't see a flaw really with the puddle, because the puddle I don't think is talking about probabilities so much as it's saying that you're looking at it and you're trying to make it seem like something that formed you is something that was perfect for you in a way that it didn't form you, right? So it's like ignoring the fact that you're actually a product. Your shape is a product of the puddle. And with creationism, what they're saying is it's just amazing that that this puddle is shaped just like us. And it's like, well, the puddle is dictating the shape.
No, I understand the puddle analogy, but
I just don't think I don't really see how that confronts probabilities.
What do you mean?
I don't understand how the puddle analogy is tied to probabilities.
No, but the fine-tuning argument is tied to probability.
Yeah.
It's like the odds are so...
Oh, right. Yes.
low.
Yeah, and the more information you get, the more you can make better assessments of any probability.
Yeah, and when I've watched a lot of your show, and I have not seen once a caller who heard the puddle analogy saying, oh yeah, everybody went back to the probability. Yeah, the puddle, but
So what you're saying is when somebody starts to give astronomical probabilities that this world would exist, you're saying the probability is 100% because here it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the long story short.
I understand. Yeah, no, I think I get you.
All right, so yeah, I guess thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for calling. It was interesting to talk to you about Austria and religion in Austria.
Great country. I've been there.
Oh, there you go. Reggie says great country. He's been there.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Robert. All right.
We have a Haitian atheist on the line.
We do. So let's go ahead and speak to Pierre in Chicago, who is a Haitian atheist and wants specific advice from Reggie.
What?
You're
Hello?
on with Tracie and Reggie. Hey, Pierre.
Hello. I am Pierre, and I'm, like you said, from Haiti. I was born there, grew up there, and right now I live in Chicago. I'm an engineer in telecommunication. And so I see Reggie on the show, and I'm like, wow, let me get in and then say hi.
Very good.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, man. Yeah. So actually, I've become an atheist like about a year ago, and it was because of technically discrepancies found in the Bible. That's really the main reason that led me out of religion in general. But then as soon as I saw that, it was like an empty vessel, and then I had to go to some other sources and see what's going on. So I found Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and then that was good, but they don't go into details like you guys do on this show. So I found this show, the Atheist Experience, and I've been following you guys ever since, especially you, Tracie, and Matt. It's just amazing. And so I thought of doing the same thing for Haiti, but I didn't have the means, and I don't know anybody else from Haiti who would be an atheist. And so I saw Reggie right now. I'm like, this is the best time to call and see if we can get together and actually get something done. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you can find me online. You could just Google Haitian Freethinkers, and everything related to that is what I've been doing. But congratulations. It's good to meet another Haitian atheist, and I will help you as best as I can whenever I can.
Yeah, and I think I have put a link to Haitian Freethinkers on the blog. So you guys have a link up there for this particular show blog entry. And if anybody wants to find that and to contact you, they can actually go to Freethought blogs /AXP, look for the top post, which is going to feature this show. And in the section underneath the video is going to be a link to the Haitian Freethinkers.
That's what's up.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
No
All
problem.
right.
Much.
Networking.
Yep.
Thanks, Pierre.
Yep, thank you.
I see there's a theist from Miami. That's the second caller from Miami. I think that's kind of interesting and strange.
Okay, so should we try that one? Let's go ahead and talk to Jacob from Miami. You're on with Tracie and Reggie, and you want to talk about evidence for creator.
Yeah, how are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you.
First I wanted to, you guys were talking about earlier about why God doesn't manifest himself or why doesn't God show himself. And I just wanted to say, I think an appropriate biblical response to that would be that even if he did, people still wouldn't accept him. You see evidence of that in the Old Testament with the nation of Israel. He did manifest himself and they still didn't believe. So just wanted to sort of.
Right, but he still manifested himself, right?
Right, but it didn't matter. They still
right. So it didn't matter, and yet God kept doing it, and all of a sudden he doesn't do it anymore.
Well, whether I believe, whether I believe in God or not after he shows up is a different question. The first step is to show up, which he can't and he will not, because I know why. But if I still disbelieve, then that's on me. But at least everybody can see that, wow, you got the evidence and you still don't believe. Then that's something that we can deal with after the fact. But the point is that I asked that question because that's like a really good way to show that you actually exist, to show up.
Right, but if God knows that regardless of whether or not he shows up, you're not going to believe, then I would say him not showing up is understandable.
No, it's not when he has a history of showing up. When he has a history of showing up, and you're saying he actually has a history of showing up repeatedly in the Old Testament, even to people that didn't believe, and even when people still didn't believe, and he's omnipotent or whatever, or omniscient and knew that they weren't going to believe, and then suddenly you're saying, well, the reason he's not showing up on your show is because you're not going to believe anyway, even though he has a history of doing exactly that.
And Jacob, how does that work? How does that work when a person shows up and I still don't believe? Like Tracie's here. How can I say to everybody, I still don't believe that you exist? She's right there.
Right.
I mean, it's a done deal.
You might at that point acknowledge that he exists. You might at that point say, okay, yeah, you exist, but you wouldn't submit to his authority.
So what?
You would still be in rebellion.
So what?
I would not submit to his authority because I think he's evil, but I could not be a believer anymore because he would have showed up. It would be the same thing as if the devil shows up to you right now, would you submit to his authority?
Right. No, absolutely not. Because I think he's evil.
Exactly. So it's kind of like the same thing for me.
That's my point, though. You kind of just proved my point, though, in what you just said. You think he's evil, so you, like the scripture says, you hate him. So if he shows up, what's that going to do? You're just going to tell
right,
him
but he did. I guess what I keep saying and what I keep coming back to is that your argument that this is a reason not to show up is invalidated by the fact that you already said that he did, even in these same circumstances.
How is it invalidated by him showing up in the past? That doesn't.
Because what you're basically saying is if you know somebody's not going to believe in you anyway, why would you show up? And it's like you'd have to ask God because he's done it.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so if it's within his character to do that, wait a minute, if it's within his character to do that, you can sit here all day and make up reasons why he shouldn't do it or wouldn't do it. But the fact is he does do it. And if he does do it, there's no reason to not do it now.
Right. Well, it's not that it's in his character to do that. He shows up in the Old Testament for specific reasons. It wasn't just him doing it because
he was asked.
He did that.
Right? He was asked to show up and prove to these unbelievers that he was God.
Yeah. Well, essentially, like I said, it just doesn't. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you can agree. We can agree to disagree on that. I don't understand.
No, he did it. There's no disagreeing. He did it.
So your argument is that regardless of whether or not you would actually respond, the fact that he doesn't show up is some sort of evidence that he doesn't exist.
Right. When the tradition is that he does show up, even to non-believers, yes.
Okay. So, I don't know how that's a logical argument.
Can I say something real quick? Jacob, you're conflating two different things, if I may interject. The first thing is to show that he exists, so he shows up. The second thing that you're talking about is whether I would follow him, whether I like him or I don't like him. That's a separate question. If he shows up, we all will say that we believe because we have the evidence. The second question is we will then worship. And I'm not going to worship if it's Yahweh of the Bible because I disagree with what he's done. And I think you would disagree with what he's done too if you're a decent person. Just the same way that if the devil shows up to you, you would probably disagree with him. I don't know why, because he hasn't done as much evil.
When you say what he's done, are you referring to like the Canaanite tribes? What are you referring to?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the Canaanite tribe. I'm talking about drowning everybody. I'm talking about.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. If there was a country right now that you saw on the news was sacrificing their own children to gods, and the United States decided to go in there and take over, would you have a problem with that?
And kill all the rest of the remaining children? Yeah.
That's not really what happened. But I'm sure you've heard that argument before. That's not really what happened.
Wait. So, Jacob, do you have a problem with killing your own child?
Well, of course.
Okay, because I know that's what Yahweh is famous for, right? Jesus, he gave his only beloved son. So that, that's how the old Christian.
For the sins of the whole entire planet.
But right, so his child got sacrificed.
Right, he made a human sacrifice basically, and that was his whole setup, right? He could have made any plan he wanted, and his plan was a human sacrifice.
Well, but he, obviously God knows that Jesus is God. Jesus is God incarnate. It's not like he's losing his son.
So maybe the Canaanites.
So he didn't lose his son. Well, there's a new spin on the Christian.
So maybe
narrative.
the Canaanites knew something when they were doing their.
What do you mean that's a new spin?
Because most people say that God gave his only son. In fact, that's a quote almost from the Bible.
But Jesus is God incarnate.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have an everlasting life.
According to Christians, does Jesus still exist? According to the Christian faith?
Yes, they say he still exists. So what you're basically saying is that there was no sacrifice now. Now your argument is that nothing was really sacrificed because nobody died.
He suffered. No, he suffered and died on the cross, but was he not resurrected?
They're saying that he was resurrected, which kind of negates the sacrifice, right? So nobody died.
Well, I just
does it negate the sacrifice?
Because there wasn't one. If you're still alive, you didn't die.
Jacob, I just wanted to point out that if.
But wait a minute. But hold on. I just want to confirm what you just said. So you just said that he didn't die because he was resurrected from the dead.
Did he ever really die? According to the Christians, did he cease to exist at any point?
No.
Okay, so then he didn't die.
He's God.
Right. So there was no death.
The idea would be, and I'm sure you've heard of this, is the idea of hypostatic union. So Jesus has two natures. He's fully human, and at the same time, he's full deity.
But Jacob,
So
a lot of people...
You can't be 100% human and 100% deity unless humans are deities.
A lot of people, even in the Bible, have resurrected. So even Jesus resurrecting is not a unique or, thing, because that was,
Lazarus was resurrected.
That reminds me of that drink that's like something like nothing but lemonade or something like that. And now they've got nothing but lemonade with cranberry. Like, it makes no sense.
You know what's interesting is that you guys are ready to admit that you don't know everything about science, but when it comes to theology, you that's not something you're.
No, I'm totally willing to say that a lot of this stuff makes no sense to me, and I don't understand it. And I'm just saying that when other people explain it, it doesn't make sense either.
So right, but does that mean that it's not true because you don't understand it?
No, but when somebody says something that's impossible, that would be not true.
Okay.
I can't say that this piece of fruit in my... I can't say that I have a piece of fruit that is 100% apple and 100% orange. That piece of fruit doesn't exist.
That's not a good analogy. Jesus was fully God and fully man at the same time. So two separate natures.
You said he was 100% human and 100% God. That was exactly what you said.
Yeah, it should be. Well, it should be fully man, fully God. 100% is. I shouldn't have said that. So it's fully man, fully God.
Well, what if I said I'm fully man, I'm fully God?
Well, that's you can say that. That's irrelevant, though. The point is that
why is it irrelevant? Wait a minute. Why is it irrelevant?
Well, because that's not part of the conversation. He can deify himself if he wants. I don't see how that's relevant to the conversation.
I think he just did.
We're talking about the same thing.
No,
I just made a statement. I'm 100%. I'm fully God and I'm fully man. So therefore.
Okay, great.
You're going to worship me?
I don't know.
Because you can see me. I've actually taken my time to show up to the Atheist Experience. You see me, unlike Yahweh, and you're not going to give me my just dues? That's 10% of your income, by the way. Thank you.
I don't understand how that. Yeah, that doesn't apply to Christians. But I don't understand how that's a relevant point.
It's relevant because I'm here. You're talking to me.
I don't understand how any of this is relevant because we're supposed to be talking about evidence for a creator.
Okay, right. So let me get to that point then. Do you guys think that there's any evidence at all for outside of any religion? So forget about talking specific religions. Just the idea that there's a creative being that put everything together. Do you think there's any evidence for that at all?
I see no evidence for it.
No, I do not.
You see no evidence for a creator?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Wow, that's amazing. So complex biology, the systems in the universe, that absolutely doesn't move you at all in terms of...
No, and it doesn't move biologists, and it doesn't move cosmologists either.
None of them. You can make that statement. No, there's no Christian biologists.
No, I'm not saying I'm saying that their knowledge of biology is not being put forward as some sort of published paper trying to demonstrate God's hand. So they don't see God's hand in it enough to actually try and assert that on a professional level. So as far as
plenty of them do, though. There's plenty of Christian biologists that write thesis statements. There's plenty of that.
Yeah, they tried it in Dover. They tried it in Dover where they put those papers on trial, and they found that it was just creationism dressed up to try and get it into a classroom, that there was really nothing, there was no validity to this. And in fact, other people in biology reject those ideas, such as irreducible complexity, right? If you go and look up the Pierre response to it, you're not going to find that this is the consensus of biologists. In fact, it's a minority fringe view.
Or we can do this. I'm here. I have some water in my cup. Can you ask the creator to create some wine right now?
Well, before we move on, I just want to say that if the scientists themselves are not publishing and saying, hey, it's our consensus that the field of biology demonstrates the hand of God, or it's our consensus that the field of cosmology demonstrates the hand of God, then you shouldn't be amazed when someone says, I don't see the hand of God in this stuff.
What you're saying right now is a dishonest argument. There's been scientists from Einstein to current day biologists and medical that can, that assert that the complexity of biology and the universe is absolutely and obviously evidence for a creator.
And yet they can't convince the broad field of biologists that there's anything to it, and they're, for the most part, not even trying, right?
But it's not, I don't really.
If it's that obvious, why aren't they just writing it down in terms that their peers can understand and that they can then be convinced that this shows the hand of God? This is not hard. This is how you, if you're a biologist and you're convinced of something that biology is demonstrating, that's the thing you do, right? You put forward a peer-reviewed paper and you make that argument and you let people assess it and criticize it. And when that's done, those arguments don't fly.
That assertion. They don't fly in your mind.
No, they don't fly in the fields in which they're being suggested by the fringe people suggesting them.
That's not true at all. That is not true at all. They're not accepted by atheists. To say that they're not accepted at all is a dishonest statement.
No, it's not dishonest at all. There is nothing about consensus of biology that dictates that there's a God. And there's nothing about the consensus of cosmology that concludes that there's a God.
No one's saying that it's conclusive evidence for a God.
No, I'm not saying conclusive. I'm saying consensus. The scientists themselves do not hold that this is a demonstrated fact based on their fields.
No, you're only going to give it. You're only going to see it as legitimate if there's a consensus.
Yes.
That's your standard?
That should be everyone's standard.
There's no consensus that what you believe is true. So how's your argument?
Holy cow. If a thing is not consensus, what you're basically saying is that the majority of people in the field, the majority of experts in this field do not believe this is a correct thing. And so when they're the experts in the field and they're validating this information and they're looking at the information and the evidence that's presented and they're saying, we don't think that this is the proper conclusion, that the person who wrote this paper, the conclusion that they're making or trying to make is not demonstrated by this evidence. There's problems with this paper. They're evaluating it based on professional expertise and the capacity to evaluate it. And they're saying in the majority that this is not evidence for a God. And so for you to act like I'm somehow amazing that I don't accept biology as evidence for God when the majority of biologists and the field of biology does not put it forward.
But I'm not talking about biology being evidence for God. I'm talking about biology being evidence for
a creator,
an indicator.
A creator. And they have not put this forward. This is not consensus. Biology does not say this. It doesn't promote it. It's not part of biology.
So you're saying.
So you need a better argument than look at biology.
You're saying that the systems that cause your body to function, that work together, along with the systems in the universe that create an environment where this same body can thrive in.
No, it didn't create an environment in which this body can thrive. This is the puddle, man. We were just talking about this with another caller.
Okay, so
this is the puddle.
So the environment that you live in, that if it were any different, you probably wouldn't survive.
Then I would be different. I would be different, and we'd be having this conversation, and I would be different.
Okay, so
but the point is that people who study the fields and are expert in the fields that you are invoking do not accept your conclusion based on their knowledge of the field.
A growing number of them do.
No, I don't care about their personal beliefs. My plumber can be a Christian. It doesn't mean that plumbing demonstrates God.
No, I'm talking about people that actually study these things.
Right. They are not saying, they are not putting their money where their mouth is. They are not trying to present evidence to convince their peers to change the consensus of their field to say that it demonstrates a God. I don't even know what else to say about it. I mean, man, I'm dropping this call. I don't know how else to explain this. I mean, for somebody to just keep telling me, but biology, and it's like, yeah, and biologists have not come out with, as far as I know, there is no professional association of biologists that puts forward that biology demonstrates a God exists or that it is evidence for a creator. I don't know of any, valid peer-reviewed group of biologists who puts forward that this is demonstrated in their field. This is totally different than whether or not they personally believe a God exists. You can personally believe a God exists, and you can see God in, your toast or in a cell or a baby's face. But the fact is, unless you have consensus in the field of expert peers that this is really what we're looking at here, you don't get to just go around telling other people that that's how they have to look at it. Let the experts look at it that way. And if you think they should, then talk to them about it. Write your paper, get it published. I mean, I just saw this thing about a little girl who was like, I think she was like 11 or 12 and she got her first paper published in JAMA, right? So you don't even have to have the requisite degrees. She did a study on, like touch healing or something like that. Now, this wasn't like a recent thing. It was in a book that I was reading on management, actually. But it dealt with the idea of evidence and testing and measurability. It was talking about how you can measure intangibles. And so they talked about this study that the little girl did and how simple it is to sometimes to measure a thing that sounds like it's complicated. And she did this little study, but she was just a child and she published in JAMA. It's like, this, if you really want to prove it, if you really think you're seeing it and you think that experts in the field need to see it, not just on a personal level, but a professional, let them put their credentials on this. And some of them do. There are papers published on irreducible complexity and they get shredded by the community of peers. You don't see the community of peers saying, wow, we never thought of this before. This is completely convincing. Or even, we should look into this more because this is definitely something going on here. You don't even see that. You just see blanket criticism. All right. So anyway, people who disagree can go to the blog and tell me I'm wrong and that I shouldn't have hung up on that caller. But that was circles. We were going in circles. I was repeating myself, they were repeating themselves, and this was not going to get resolved.
I think it's just easier to just show up and just create. Why can't God just come and create? Am I asking for too much? Just create.
Yeah.
You're a creator, create.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's try Ray in Texas, who has a definition for God. Hi, Ray, you're on with Tracie and Reggie.
Hey, how's it going, Tracie?
Hey, doing okay. What's up?
Well, definition of God, I was kind of wondering if I am truly an atheist because I'm a deist and I have my own beliefs of God, if that qualifies as a definition of God.
Man, if you're calling it God, I'm going to say that for you, it's probably theism. I might not accept it as a God, but I can't tell you what you have to. I can't say you can't accept it as a God. I can only say whether or not I would.
Well, I disbelieve every religion on earth, and I do not put any credit in the supernatural abilities usually attributed to a God. So I consider myself an atheist simply because I don't believe in any religion that anybody's ever, put forth to me.
But you're an atheist with a definition of God.
Well, yeah, I think God is just more like a consciousness, like the original consciousness of the universe. I think...
is there an original consciousness of the universe?
It's hard to explain my beliefs.
Like the first thing that evolved consciousness, or proto-consciousness, or...
I think that life has a purpose in the universe. I don't think life is the purpose for the living things. I think the universe itself has a purpose for life in the universe. I think that everything in the universe has a purpose. And I think it would be silly to think that we would be the only things in the universe that don't have a purpose.
Why do you think anything has a purpose in this universe?
I think that the universe would not exist without a conscious life form in it.
Why?
Because nothing could sense the universe.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So we're talking about here that there is a universe, and within the universe, some things are non-conscious and some things are conscious, right? And are you saying that if it were composed of purely non-conscious things, it wouldn't exist?
Essentially, it would not exist.
If we're talking about manifestation, like conscious manifestation, then you have a semantic point in that, we could kind of rule out that the word existence would have very little meaning, right? Because we use it as manifestation, which what are you manifesting to if not something that can, perceive manifesting things? So from that perspective, I would say I believe I can accept your point. I still think these things would have tangible physical existence, although even the word tangible might become useless at a point you had no conscious minds. The things would be there, but whether or not anything would perceive of them, obviously not if there was no consciousness, at least not in the way that we understand perception.
Right. Something has to see. It's almost like the tree in the forest thing, only a lot taken to an nth degree.
Right. The sound waves would go out, but nothing would pick them up. And so if you define sound as the waves, then it would make a sound. If you define sound as the perception, then no, it made no sound.
Right. I think the answer to that question is just how you define sound. I agree.
All right.
So this is how I picture the universe. Then I think the universe is a kind of like a vague construct. It's almost like we're like you would be a fish swimming in an ocean if we could perceive the entire universe. The reason that we get the universe that we experience is simply because our senses limit us to being able to experience a small part of the universe. I really think if we could sense everything...
Right, we don't have access to the entire universe. I think we're on board.
Okay, and so that's it. So I think I think like the original consciousness of God can literally sense everything in the universe, which actually does him no good. And I think he can sense the universe.
Okay, now you've lost me. I understand there are things in the universe that are conscious, but where are you getting like a consciousness of God? Like what is that? Where did that come from?
The same thing. Actually, I had that thought when I was a kid. The same thing that happens in our brain. You know, it seems that the action of small particles that each in themselves do tiny little things but have no idea of the overall goal. It seems like that's where consciousness arises.
Well, wait a minute. Now I'm really confused because I don't know what you mean by overall goal. Now, the idea that, yes, conscious things...
Goal, a cell in your body has no idea. Oh, maybe goal is a bad word. The overall result. The cell in your body
right, doesn't understand what it does.
Right,
it's not self-aware.
Person alive.
Right. It's not self-aware, but I have no reason to think that something that is self-aware produced it.
I don't know what you mean by self-aware.
Well, because you sounded like what you were saying is that there was some sort of conscious being that created these things that aren't conscious that are doing what they do. I might have misunderstood.
Yeah, things just come about naturally through chemical processes in the universe, and these natural processes also develop a consciousness, basically through movement of millions of small little particles, each doing their own little functions, unaware of the entire human body that they're...
Okay. Yeah, no, I follow.
Okay, and I think the universe is the same way.
That's where I have trouble following.
I think...
I can't follow you there.
The consciousness of God...
Wait, I'm not worried about what you think about it. I'm worried about why you think it.
I'm sorry. I guess we're losing our connection a little bit, too.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking why you think this. Like, why do you think the universe works like a person and that the universe has consciousness of its own in some way?
Because it was just my initial concepts in life when I was a kid.
Right, but you understand, just because you think of something doesn't make it true. Is that correct? I mean, I think of things all the time that aren't true.
Right. But as science progresses, and I watch science and I see what's going on in the quantum universe, and I see the theories of all the sciences, I just see that nothing has ruled out any of these beliefs that I had.
Wait a minute, but ruling something out. The question is, how did you get to accept it in the first place? It's not like science has to rule. Science hasn't ruled out a lot of things that doesn't make them true.
Because I do believe there's a God.
Right. Science hasn't ruled out Bigfoot, but that's not a reason to believe that there is one.
Well, Bigfoot didn't, come about as the entire universe either.
Well, we don't know that God came about as the entire universe either.
I think it's very logical, though. I think it's very logical to think that at one time...
It doesn't really matter. That what matters is whether it's true.
Well, no, not to me, I guess. I didn't call up really to... I'm not trying to convince you that what I'm saying is true. I'm kind of calling up to see if I can still be an atheist when I don't believe in a religion. I don't have any religion.
Yes, I think that if you believe that there is a creator of the universe that is conscious and personal and that it, produces all things, runs all things, I would say most people would hand you God, right? They would say that you can use that label.
He does produce all things. I don't think he produces all things and runs all things.
Well, you said he was like the consciousness of the universe.
The consciousness. He doesn't run anything. He's just aware of. Well,
you compared all these things to like a body, right? And you said that they're all part of you, and that you have this consciousness, and all these things kind of do their thing, and they're part of you, right? So God is a consciousness, and the universe is God's body. Is kind of what you're describing. At least that's what I'm understanding.
I guess kind of like that in a way. I think God is different in different parts of the universe. It's not just that's a pretty simplistic view, what you said. I think if you go to a different part of the universe with different things and different matter making different motions, that you may find that, like in different parts of your brain, that God is completely different in different parts of the universe. So it's a little simplistic what you said, but I guess essentially it's kind of like that. I think God is the universe, or at least this part of the universe.
I would say that most people, if you said that the universe has a mind, and a purpose, and that mind kind of drives the I don't know. I would say most people would take that and say that you're not abusing the label God. Like I think that would sort of squishily fit into that definition. I would say I wouldn't call you an atheist.
Oh well, but God puts no demands on us.
It doesn't matter.
If you're moral
it really doesn't matter. You described it initially as being a deist, right? So you believe that God created the universe and just let his hands off.
No, he does not create the universe. The universe created God. I think God came about as the result of the movements of the universe. And I think God is a natural creation of the universe, and he doesn't have any influence on the universe except his consciousness allows it to exist.
All right, so God keeps the universe going.
No, God sees the universe going.
But his consciousness allows it to exist. You didn't just say his consciousness, observes it. You said it allows it to exist.
I didn't mean, if I said that, I misspoke. I don't remember.
That's okay.
What I said that sentence too. No, I don't think he allows things to exist, but I think he came about he naturally arose out of the universe. And I don't think he has any particular powers. I think life's purpose in the universe is simply to bear witness to the universe so that it can exist. I think it does have a purpose in the universe, just like everything seems to have a purpose in the universe. And when I say purpose, I don't mean the purpose why the universe is created. I mean a purpose as to the functions of the universe. You wouldn't have a universe as we recognize it if planets didn't go around the sun. So planets, in my view, have a purpose in the universe.
Yeah, purpose is a bad word to be using if that's not what you mean. I would find another way to describe that.
But all that has a purpose in the universe. And I think life, too, has a purpose in the universe. I think there is something that...
Right, but you're defining purpose as just stuff that stuff does. Like a rock rolling down a hill, you're saying is a purpose. That the purpose of the rock is to roll down the hill. And I think that most people don't use the term purpose in that way. And you might want to find another label because you're going to confuse people with that.
Okay, it's a tool then. The rock is a tool of the universe.
It's just a rock rolling down a hill. The rock rolls down a hill. It does what it does.
Because of gravity.
Right.
And gravity exists in the universe.
Right, but when you're talking about a tool, though, you're going to give people the wrong impression, right? That goes right back to the problem of purpose.
Yeah. All right, well, then gravity would be the tool, I guess. Would be the tool. Okay, I'm not the label expert here. You guys are the label expert.
All right.
That's why
I just think that some of the labels you're using are anthropomorphic, and then when we start to dive into them, you start to back off the anthropomorphic meanings. And so that's the only thing I'm pointing out, is that if you're going to discuss these concepts with people, you might want to kind of think about not giving them terms. Like a tool, for example, is something that something uses in order to affect a purpose, right? Like I want to get this thing out of the jar. I use a can opener, and that's my tool that I'm using to get this done.
What if you were a universe? What if you were a universe and you wanted to?
The universe doesn't want. See, I guess that's what I'm saying is, as far as a universe, I have no reason to think it wants anything.
I know. I'm not saying it wants it.
But you are saying that. That's the problem.
You have to be. I know. Well, you have to be very careful, I guess, when we speak to you. I'm not used to speaking to you, so just bear with me. When the universe does something, when something happens something happens in the universe. I've kind of lost my train of thought now. When something happens in the universe, it's because it's the way the universe is designed right now. It's not because there's any purpose for the universe. It's the way the universe is designed right now. Things happen in the universe, like planets, suns explode and create planets.
Sure, stuff happens.
Life too converts matter into other types of matter and releases energy in the process. And I think if there is life throughout the universe, which is another one of my beliefs, I believe life literally reigns through the universe, at least in our part of it. And I think life is all over. And I think life's job is to convert matter into matter. It's not a job as like there's a purpose that the universe has, but that's what life does. The universe evolved in a certain way, and we evolved with it. And what we do in our evolution, what our part is to convert matter and energy. That's what we do.
Yes, we do that.
We have a great purpose morally in life. I think we have a function that we do in the universe, just like stars make metal.
Yeah, I think in the end, if I was going to summarize this, I would probably summarize it as things do things.
Things do things. You're right. And I think people are one of the things that do things, where people usually think that they're special somehow. They think that the whole universe was here for them, and I don't think so. I think we just do things. People do things.
We do.
And
we
things do things. And that's all.
And on that note, you get to be our final caller for the night.
An atheistic view.
Well, we have another show that I've already cut into by about 6 minutes, so I need to thank the cast, the crew, the audience, like everybody, Reggie, for coming on. Check out Haitian Free Thinkers and be ready for our next program, Parenting Beyond Belief, which is coming up right after this.
Hello, everyone. Parenting Beyond Belief will begin in a few minutes. We're changing out hosts, and they will be muted until the show begins. We will also be running a few equipment tests. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.
Hello, I am your host, Claire Woolner, and this is Parenting Beyond Belief. I have a book that I want to read, and we're not going to stay this silly the whole show, I promise you, but we're going to start this silly. Okay, so here's my book. It is a Halloween book. It's a scary book. It's called Noah's Ark, where things die, and, you know, whatever. Okay, so today's hosts are Janet Heimlich, author of Breaking Their Will, Shedding Light on Religious Child Maltreatment, and founder of the Child Friendly Faith Project.
Hi, everybody.
She's one of the protagonists. All right. And then we have Mandisa Latifa Thomas, who is on audio only. Hey, Mandisa.
Hello, Claire. Hello, Janet.
How are you?
Hi, Mandisa. Great to hear
I
your voice.
am doing well.
Right
Thank
on.
you.
Right on. And she is founder and president of Black Nonbelievers, and she won the 2018 Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association Person of the Year Award. All righty. And then there's Claire Woolner. That's me. I'm on the board of the ACA, president of the board of Foundation Beyond Belief, and also hosts Godless, I can't say that word, B 2.0. And let's see here. I've got some announcements. Welcome to the official launching of Parenting Beyond Belief. This has been in the works for a while.
Yay.
The secular community needs this very much. Let me see. I need to find... Oh. All right. So this is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin. Yay! And we are a secular nonprofit dedicated to the promotion of positive atheism. And let's see. Next week, we'll have different hosts. It will be me again, and it will be Dale McGowan, who authored the gold standard secular parenting book, Parenting Beyond Belief, from which this show has eponymed itself. I'm not sure. And he also wrote In Faith and in Doubt, Raising Freethinkers, and we will have a special guest, a really super special guest. So tune in because it will be awesome. I hope that y'all will subscribe to Parenting Beyond Belief. Sorry for all the noise. And Spreaker and Patreon, because those are the things that help keep us going. And I think we have some good stuff to tell you. The purpose of this show is to help parents do their job of raising children in a religious world, but in a secular way. And that may not sound like a big deal. And in some parts of the world, it isn't. But there are parts of the world where it is a very big deal. And Texas happens to be one of those. Oh, and by the way, my Halloween costume, if you know about Austin, Texas, you might know about the largest metropolitan bat population, the Mexican free-tailed bats. They live under the Congress Street Bridge. And if I turn around, I am the Congress Street Bridge. And I have bats all over me and stuff. So that's my bit of Austin and Halloween and parenting all rolled into one, because I can do that because I'm a mom, 4 or 5 things at once. All right.
And I love that our first show is close to Halloween.
Halloween, right? It's awesome. Let's see.
And I think I'll just take a minute
You go,
to say
girl.
hi to my daughter Maxine and let you know, Max, that I'm for the first time wearing your socks that say best mom ever. I'll try to live up to that standard.
Not too embarrassing now, was that? Oh, cool. Okay, so the things we're going to do today, the format of the show will be just introduction, announcements, and stuff like that. And then we're going to talk about one aspect of parenting. And today we'll be talking about something called the Arc of the Tantrum. This was put together by a dear friend of mine, Katie Malinsky, and this is her stuff, and you can find it on katiemalinsky.com, and we'll look at that in a minute. But then we'll do a game called Tales from the Crib, which is super relevant, Halloween, where we will each of the hosts tell a story about our own children, often making us look a little, silly or something. And then any caller who wants to call in with a tale from the crib, that'd be fine too. And then we'll take calls from parents, and we have several already, so I'm super excited about that, even one from the Ukraine. All right. So, first of all,
where do you want to start?
The arc of the tantrum. Mark, can you put that, the arc graphic up there? We have all had our children throw tantrums, and actually this works for any person or child, anybody who's dysregulated. So I know you can't see the words, they're super tiny, so let me kind of walk you through it. The dark green on the left is when things are normal, and the purple finger is when the trigger occurs. So something just sets the child off, or the adult sometimes too, and it doesn't matter what that thing is, but they get triggered. You can try to avoid having that trigger not happen, and one thing is to make sure they get enough sleep, exercise, nutrition, consistent routines, and clear, consistent expectations, and front-loading your kid. If you don't know what front-loading is, it's when you tell the kid ahead of time what to expect. And then also another thing that triggers a lot of kids, used to trigger mine if I didn't give them enough heads up, was the transition. So you say, we're going to leave in 5 minutes, and get ready for that and so forth. Anyhow, then the trigger occurs, and the dysregulation escalates, and you get into the dysregulation zone. This is when it's a full-on tantrum. They're completely in their lizard brain. They are not thinking about anything but their very strong feelings. And the higher functioning of the brain, part of the brain, is just gone. What you can do, there are only a few things you can do, and those are the only things you should do. Trying to talk to them is not going to work. I see this all the time. I'm sure you do too. Maybe you've even done it. I've done it, I know. In the grocery store, you're in a hurry, and the kid's throwing a tantrum, and you're like, good gravy, I've got to get these groceries, I've got to get home, I've got to make dinner, I've got to blah, 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 blah. And the child, of course, chooses that time to fall apart. And you're just pushing the child, and the child's falling apart. That's not ideal. I may have to take these off. Really, the best thing in the world is to stop everything and just be there for them. Be available to your child and help them regain their regulation. And the thing that I used to say to my kids was, I will hold you for as long as you need me to hold you. When I would do that, there would be an immediate centering because they knew I meant it and they felt safer. And it usually only took a few minutes. It's not going to take a half an hour out of your day. It's going to take 2 to 4 minutes. And that 2 to 4 minute break that you take with your kid is going to be crucial to building all sorts of trust and attachment and good things for parenting. And so just stop your world and just take care of the kid. Everything else can wait, almost always. I know there are exceptions to that rule, but almost always. Okay, so once they're calming down, the voices are getting quieter, your child is still de-escalating. It's probably still not a good time to try to talk to them. You have to offer them physical affection if they want to be hugged. And you can remember that you might need time too. I am sure we've all been there where your child is falling apart and you're barely not falling apart, or maybe you have fallen apart. And it's fair to say, mommy needs to take a second too. Can we please just regroup and maybe hug each other for a little bit or something, or maybe give each other some time alone. And then once the child is back down to normal, that's when you can revisit what happened and talk about it to the child. What happened, how come they got dysregulated, not using those words, of course, and debriefing on how you could maybe do things differently, or just explaining things to the kiddo so that they understand. I will say this, not everybody has this kid, but when my son would fall apart, I would be able to say to him, "You are crashing. You need to eat something." And he would listen. He would stop and just eat something. I guess, I don't know what was different about him that he could pull out enough just to stop and eat something, but he could do that. Maybe try it. I don't know. So there's that. And it's a pretty brilliant parenting bit of advice, and I recommend it highly.
I think that it's always a hugely stressful thing to have happen for both the child and the parent. But if parents can try to not feel like they need to fix it, like this has to get over quickly, the goal, and this is a hard one because, especially if you're in a public place, there's so much cultural influence that put on parents, so that they feel like this is embarrassing. People are judging me. They think I'm a terrible parent. My child should not be acting out. My child should be totally obedient, and that's what makes me a great parent. Well, this is a natural part of children's development at that age, and they're just getting used to what autonomy feels like. And when they're having a meltdown, there is something hugely stressful going on with the child, and usually adults have no idea what it is. But try to be okay with not understanding exactly what's going on. Try to be okay with not caring what those around you think. I remember once seeing a father beautifully handling a tantrum. It was in a really crowded place, and I just thought he was role modeling for all the adults there. And what was happening was the child was just, having a full-on tantrum, throwing arms and legs on the ground and spinning around, and the father was just crouched down there, didn't look like this was the end of the world, and he was just waiting.
Just present.
He was present, obviously making sure that the child is safe, that someone wasn't going to come along and step on the child, or that, hit their head or something like that. So the goal, it seemed like, for that father was to make sure the child is safe. And other than that, all we really can do is just kind of wait it out. They have to do this. It's just part of their development.
Yeah.
It's hard, but the observing parent is one that I talk a lot about, because I think that parents oftentimes they want to fix it, they want to make it better, they want to make it go away.
Right.
You just can't control everything, especially at that age.
Right on. Mandisa?
Yeah, so I am in the middle of understanding all of that, and also having analyzed my parenting, looking at research, as well as reflecting on myself, because the older I get, the more I realize that I have a serious case of misophonia, which is a sensitivity to noise.
Right.
And so I think that as parents, we get so wrapped up in our responsibilities that we sometimes tend to forget about, ourselves. And in that, in trying to make sure that if there is an instance where we have children that are, crying, fussing, and screaming, it may be difficult at that moment to remember that there may be a sensitivity to certain noises, and definitely if there are frustrating circumstances, especially if they're out in the public, because there's always that what the like the standard operating procedure, what the procedure should be, and then once you get out there on the street, what happens? So there tends to be this. It's good to try to remember that at all times. But, it can be very, very difficult. And I don't think that parents should beat themselves up because we do want things to, get, We do want to try to resolve it as quickly as possible for everyone and for everyone involved, even for the child.
Right.
So, yeah, and I know that there is, there may be instances where there is absolutely nothing we can do, but especially as moms, that can be hard because we want to know what the problem is. We want to know how we can fix it, and we want to know how we can fix it as quickly as possible. So that, and then hopefully learning from the situation what we can do next time.
Yeah.
So I think that, learning and learning identifying triggers, because I know for my youngest son, Miles, he has a tendency to start talking really fast and he gets really frustrated. And sometimes I have to tell him to, just slow down, collect yourself and speak slowly. Don't try to get everything out, because then he finds that he's finding himself getting frustrated. And then that almost turns into a tantrum. So I do try to redirect as much as possible. Redirection is a good thing for children, as well as, and then for smaller children, like I said, if you're in a store, there might be something that could distract them very quickly. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that might help. Yeah. But, for all intents and purposes, yes, it can be, very, embarrassing if there is a child that is acting out publicly. Yeah. But and I tend to think that there may be different situations. Like if there's something going on in school, there might be, or even at home, there might be a specific circumstance that we might be able to get to the bottom of. But when it's just, on a whim, sometimes that may be a little difficult to determine. Mm-hmm. So, but I guess using the best judgment and being as objective as possible can be the best solution there.
Right.
And I'm just going off of like a layman's parenting.
Right.
But, so yeah, I do agree that, there are sometimes that, those expectations can get in the way, and it is good for us to rethink them. I will tell my children, look, I've had a bad day. I'm going to, please don't talk to mommy right now. We will talk about this later. And I think that's okay. I also think it's okay for, parents and children not to go everywhere. If there is an adult or an older child in the house that can stay with the younger children while you go to the store, please leave them at home. Especially if you know that there might be a tendency for the child to, if there may be circumstances where the noises might, either amplify them, then I encourage, I do encourage that there may be some better solutions, and to just keep the kids at home while you go and do things by yourself. That may be the best thing. There's nothing wrong with not taking your children everywhere. Mm-hmm. I think that's also a societal stigma that we have to do everything with our children. They have to be involved with every aspect of our lives and vice versa, and that simply isn't true. It's a good way to help teach independence by us not always being in each other's space, lock and step.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also speaks to what you were saying, Marisa, about self-care and taking care of yourself as a parent, as a person. Just having sometimes some time by yourself while you're walking down the grocery aisles, just to, quietly take a look at the, whatever, you may or may not be looking for, but just having time to, without having the responsibility as a parent, I think can be very nourishing and freeing. And, okay. And
we had a caller last time we were on who didn't have that option. And I know a lot of single parents don't have that option. And so you are having to do all the things. And if your child melts down, dealing with it can be really trying beyond
It's
words.
important to look for that time when you can grab it, and it's not always. Mm-hmm. It's a luxury to some people, for sure. I do want to also just mention one other thing that Mandisa said, having to do with anticipating a blow up. these things build. A parent may think that, wait, this just came out of nowhere. But then, you look back and you think, wait a minute, I was on that 45-minute phone call and the two kids were doing what while I was on the phone? And there can be all kinds of things going on that, again, being the observant parent, not necessarily interfering with everything or even having to engage with your kid, but just to observe what's going on occasionally and try to anticipate things like that, making sure that, they aren't overly tired or just there's a snack around, in case, low blood sugar is an issue.
Right. You have to step into their shoes, too. If you've ever been in a foreign country where you don't understand everything that's going on around you and you don't understand the language very well and you might be a little tired and then somebody says, okay, now let's go out to dinner, and you're like, oh, I can't. You have to put yourself in the kiddos' shoes. They don't even have your level of maturity to cope with it as well. They're dealing with all of this information that they don't always understand, and if they're tired, they just do that. And people who judge parents whose children throw tantrums don't know anything. They can just take a flying leap. Anybody who wants to judge, especially on airplanes, the whole stereotype of the child on the airplane throwing the fit and everybody wants to throw the kid out the window. Show some compassion. It's really hard. I was that person on the airplane once with my very small son, and he had an ear infection that we didn't know about, and he got on the plane and he yowled the whole time, and we were trying everything we could to help him be comfortable and help him be quiet, and I was in tears, and my husband was just falling apart, and of course the child is still crying. And the thing that was fantastic is because we were walking up down the aisle trying to keep him happy, at one point the stewardess, when we were going to land, said, just take these seats and put us in first class because there's enough room for me to hold him and nurse at the same time. And while I was sitting there in tears and everybody else is deplaning, one woman, and I wish I knew who she was, I'd send her a thank you note. She said, I was in tears. She said, you're a good mother. And I was like, wow, how many people say that to the mother of the screaming infant coming off the airplane? It's hard as hell. You're trapped. There's nothing you can do. And yes, people have to travel with children sometimes. So
I would like to lobby that we could please stop using that expression, the terrible twos. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that came from, but this idea of demonizing children at this certain age, it's like, understand what their brain's going through at least, it's just the wrong approach. It's tough, but let's not keep using that expression.
Right, and coming back around to the whole fixing thing, where you want to fix the kid, when they're unhappy, help them, you want to help them. I can tell you from being raised by a mother who didn't comfort me, when I would cry, she would tell me to stop crying because I was upsetting other people. I don't ever remember a time in my whole childhood, my whole life really, where my mother comforted me. I know how much just being held and listened to and somebody taking the time to just comfort you is enough. So, it's plenty.
Just be present.
It's just being present. It's a big thing. Yep. Shall we go to a call, and then maybe after the call we can play a game and so on? Okay, this is where I need to put my eyeballs on and see who has called and what they're saying.
Andisa, really sorry about garbling your name.
Okay, so let's go with Josh from Illinois. You're on with Mandisa, Janet, and Claire. Are you there?
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Josh.
All three of you.
Right.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Did you have
everyone.
A question?
Good. Thank you.
More of a story and then possible, looking for maybe advice after the story. It won't take long because it didn't take me long with the screener. I'm just in a position where I don't really know what to do. So I was seeing if this show might be able to help me out with that. So I am an atheist, and my soon-to-be ex-wife is a Catholic. And we got married and then had a child, and now we're going through a divorce. And she knew beforehand that I was an atheist, so it really wasn't a surprise or anything to her to do any of that. But like, she started to have problems with me, and it seems like once she had one problem, everything else became a problem. So it wasn't a big deal to her before, but now it's a big deal that I'm an atheist. And she, being a Catholic, is very, very, she really wants to raise our daughter as a Catholic, and really is adamant that I just play along.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
So the problem is that I'm not going to do that, and she thinks that is me ruining her life, essentially, or trying to ruin her life and all of that. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out maybe ways to go about doing that, because I mean, I don't ever imagine that it will be that I'm just actively denying their religion in front of them or anything. I just said I'm not going to reinforce it, and I'm not going to teach her that that's what's right. I'll teach her what I think is right in my own time.
Mm-hmm. I think you've got the answer right there. Have you read Dale McGowan's In Faith and in Doubt? It talks about this very sort of thing where you have a religious parent and a non-religious parent raising a child and how you work that out.
I have not, but could you repeat the name of it?
In Faith and in Doubt.
In Faith and in Doubt.
Yeah, and it has to be all about the kid. If she's trying to make this about you, then that's a problem. It should be about what's best for the kiddo. And if you keep emphasizing that that's where you are, what is best for my child? I will not disparage what you want to do, and I ask that you not disparage what I want to do. And we are both doing what we think is best for our kiddo. And in the end, let's hope that she's going to be okay with that. Right?
Yeah.
Josh,
yeah.
I had a question for you.
Sure.
Have you and your soon-to-be ex-wife done any couples counseling?
I asked for that because that was my thing that I wanted to do to try to avoid divorce in the first place, and she just didn't want to do any of that. She said at that point she had endured enough and didn't want to even try that.
Well, I just was going to mention that the communication between you and this woman is going to be really important as you move forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that the book that Claire mentioned, written by Dale McGowan, would be really helpful. But chances are she's probably not going to read that book. No. And if there is any way that you can find a way to help improve the communication as you move forward, if it devolves, then I think then your child is going to be possibly negatively impacted. So that anything you can do to try to improve the communication can be very focused just on your child. Yep. Even if you both have decided this relationship is over in terms of it being romantic or intimate or even a friendship, but as co-parents, if there is any way that you can seek some kind of mediation to just work out that particular communication about your child, I think that would be really valuable for all concerned.
Yeah. Mandisa?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. It just seems that she thinks being her mother means that she knows everything about our daughter, and that I, being the father, know nothing about it.
Here's just a weird suggestion, perhaps, but a lot of people, not a lot, but some people of faith do not trust secular mental health professionals. It may be something she would be open to for you two to kind of split the time if, for example, you would agree to meet with a person from her church. I mean, I'm not saying that you would necessarily get a lot out of that, but if that might help to get her to agree to see, say, your choice of therapist part of the time. I know this is sounding like, well, this could probably never happen that she'd agree to any of this, but again, I don't know. It's just. I feel for you. I think
if I may,
difficult situation.
If I ask a question, Josh, is this?
Yes.
Did I get up? So was there, did this all, I guess, did the discourse start once you had your child, or were there some things that you may have picked up about her background, or something that may have been sort of like, I guess, a warning sign that she may not be open once, even with your atheism? Because one thing I found about, one thing I find about relationships, and I speak from experience as well, is that, when we're getting to know our partners, even before we have children, there are some things that we may notice or that we may see happening that we just kind of either ignore, or we think that they may not be a big deal right now. And then we may not realize how much of an issue it may be later on down the line, especially once you have children. Right. So do you know if there's any other sort of traumatic issues or concerns that your soon-to-be ex-wife has been or is going through in addition to this, or that may have triggered it? Because oftentimes we may not think about that when this time comes along. So, I mean, it's just kind of a thought there.
Yeah, so in my particular case, the old cliche, hindsight is 20/20. Their whole family is really, really Catholic. Like, they never miss a Sunday, kind of, take everything literally type of thing. So, but the other part of that is that her dad is very, very, very controlling. So I think, because in having conversations with her about how we believed differently, because that's something that I really enjoy doing, I kind of got the sense that she kind of just believed because he does.
That's her choice.
I absolutely agree, and I didn't fault her for that at all. I don't have any problems with people being religious or anything. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dated her and ended up marrying her in the first place.
Yeah, but the thing that I want to get to real fast, I'm sorry, is that your wife doesn't have any choice, but that really made me jump when you said that the father was super controlling. That, to me, means that you are that much more important to your little girl's life in learning about. I
absolutely agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm glad you get that. Okay, go on. I'm sorry to have interrupted.
Yeah.
I felt that was really.
Oh no, you're fine. I just it's something I kind of knew but never really thought about as something that would negatively impact our relationship. And so when it did, it kind of came as a slap in the face and everything, because now she's just ultra Catholic, and our daughter's going to Catholic school, and there's nothing you're going to say to stop that. And, just everything that she can think of that she thinks of as ways that I would be ruining our daughter's life. And I'm starting to break up a little bit. Sorry.
It's hard.
Is now a problem when it wasn't.
Right.
I just really, I'm so sorry that you're dealing with such a stressful situation, and I know, I must feel like there's a lot that's out of your control, which as a parent is so difficult to
Yes.
contend with that. I think what we were talking about before about self-care for parents is going to be really important for you to make sure you've got a good support system and therapy if you think that would be helpful. But just navigating this whole really stressful thing and then wanting to be there and present for your child, just be sure to take care of your own needs, your mental health needs and things like that. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think another thing that will be important is to just continue to emphasize and stress to your daughter how much you love her, how much you care about her, and how much you will always have her best interest at heart. And how old is your daughter right now?
She'll be 2 in March.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
so yes, things are
it's
still
relatively
very
recent,
early.
everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that there might be a temptation to, because I remember this with my parents. Some parents may be tempting to point the finger at the other parent, but as hurtful as it is, it would be best to just, like you said, like Claire said, keep the emphasis on the child. Even if your soon-to-be ex-wife is not. I know there's the saying about being the bigger person, but in this instance, continuing to, show your daughter that affection and that, dad is always here for her and that you're going to, continue to put your best foot forward is going to be extremely important.
I don't envy your position, Josh. I do hope that what we've said might help a little bit, and I would really appreciate it if you called back in the future to let us know how things are going.
I absolutely will.
Okay.
I catch all the shows every Sunday. So
super. That's great.
It's replaced church for me.
Yeah, me too.
Nice.
Right.
Thank you.
I've been watching for several years. So
excellent.
Thank you for sticking on through to this show and for calling in.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Absolutely.
You have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Bye. Okay. We could play Tales from the Crib a little bit. Are you all ready for that? And then we can take a call. Who wants to go first?
Sure.
Andisa, you go first.
Oh, no. Do I have to?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. So are we supposed to be like telling sort of like an embarrassing tale about us and our kids, or just
if educational, funny, insightful, highbrow, lowbrow, anything that...
Okay. So yesterday, my youngest, Miles, participated in the Fayette County, Georgia, Fayette County Student Technology Competition. Last year, it was like a regional event, and then he and his classmates went to the statewide competition. But this year, it was a bit larger because the county had kind of gotten itself together to get it, to have the children participate. And so, interestingly enough, his classmate, who he was supposed to present with, didn't show up. Oh. And they had stayed after school to practice and everything. But yesterday, when I went with him, he presented to the judges by himself. And Claire is, I think you and I might be friends on Facebook, Janet. If y'all see me post about my kids, Miles isn't shy at all. He'll speak his mind. He's very outgoing. He's the one who will. He's my little clapback kid. He's very quick on his feet. When it comes to thinking and saying things, sometimes a bit too much. Sometimes his mouth may get him into trouble. So once we were done, though, one of his classmates asked him how the process went and who was in the room. And he said, well, it's just the two judges, unless your parent is standing right outside the room. And I just looked at him like, ew, like, so what? Like, I had to be there with you.
Oh, Mom. Exactly.
But, the thing with us is that as a family, my husband is he can be pretty snarky And he has done that with, his mom. And I know for me, I've had to kind of learn to say, hey, when the kids say certain things, it's okay to, to have that banter back and forth with them, as long as they know how far it is to, they push it.
Yeah.
But in this case, I was just like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
But it was just funny because I'm not sure anyone else would have said anything like that. But yes, he was just like, yeah, unless your mom, basically, yeah, it was the two judges there, just unless your parent was standing right there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, really? Hint, their little kids.
Right, right. I embrace being that mom. Everybody talks about that mom. I'm like, I am that mom. I am all over my kids, everything they do. I'm all, yeah. Embrace it.
Right.
Be that mom.
I wanted to make sure he was in the right place at the right time. And he ended up winning second place in the category. So I think that, considering that he had to present by himself, that went really, really well.
Go Miles.
So, he and I kind of went back and forth about how he should dress because, some of the kids just came in their regular clothes, which is fine. But I'm like, look, you might want to be a little bit more presentable. Even if you wear like a dress shirt with sneakers, or you wear your shoes with some slacks and a shirt. But you need to look uniformed. And he's just like, I don't care. I don't care how I dress. I just want to go. But no, so we went, we go back and forth on these things. We have these little debates, between, parent and child, so I'll make compromises, with my kids too. But when it comes to the day of, and they need to be paying attention to what they need to do, it's like, hey, let's make sure we have this. Let's make sure we have this process,
right?
On and make sure we have everything going correctly because, it is a competition and we do want him to be prepared. And especially because he likes technology and he's looking into going to this as a field now. He's getting into, double digits. So I'm hoping that, he continues to stay with it. And I think he will, but just kind of, he's my, he's the baby. He's the baby, he's the one who's kind of he's kind of a little smart, but, and all of them, all my kids kind of are, but
it'll serve them well
that was
later.
Just a funny little thing. Yeah. That was just very fun. Yeah, because he'll know how to stand up for himself.
Right. Absolutely.
Especially if he, and they know that if someone's bothering them, then they know what to do as opposed to, and they'll know to tell us as opposed to just staying silent, not saying anything.
Right. You want to go next?
Why don't you go?
Oh, gosh. I've been thinking about this and trying to decide which story to tell. So this is a short but sweet one. When my daughter was just a few months old and my son was 2 years and a bit, my husband had to go on a business trip for a week or something like this. Well, I was barely holding it together as it was. If he was going to be gone, then I didn't know what I was going to do, and so I went and stayed with my in-laws for that week. And it was the perfect thing to do because I hardly saw my children. Nana and Papa were all over the kiddos, and I was happy because I was being fed well, and I got to do a little R&R, which was awesome. And so at one point, I would go every day for walks because as awesome as it is to be taken care of and so forth, you got to get out of the house. And I had one of those trams that has a front seat and a back seat. And so I stuck Cole in the front seat and Renee in the back seat. And I had forgotten something. So the lock's on, we're good. We put her there in the garage, and that's fine. So I walked in the house, started to grab the thing, and my mother-in-law said, Claire, come here, look. So I looked out there, and my son was leaning over the back of the tram playing peekaboo with my daughter. So seeing a 3-month-old and a 2-year-old playing peekaboo, if that doesn't peg the cutometer, I don't know what does. So that's my little story.
Oh, wow.
And they've always been really close, and they continue to be close, which I'm very, very happy about. Not every sibling thing works out that way. But okay.
Usually great parenting
Oh, I
That's
don't
a
know.
result of, yes.
I don't know, but they do get
There's
along
not
real
enough
well.
attention paid to like sibling relationship,
right?
Work. So that's neat. Well, I don't have one particular incident, but I did think about a pattern I saw happening with my parenting that I have tried to correct. So I thought I would just talk a little bit about that. The pattern that I saw happening was that something would come up. Now, I have one child, Maxine. She's 15 now. And so everything that happened, along the way was usually a first for me because I was just a first-time parent.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like when dilemmas would come up or weird situations, new things, I would just get caught like deer in headlights. So for, that seemed to go against the instinct of a parent. So for example, when Maxine was a baby, her grandmother on her dad's side sort of had little rules about everything. Oh, and I should say that Maxine is unusually tall for her age. She always has been. She's well over 6 feet. And so the grandmother said to me, well, everyone's going to think that your child is a lot older than she is because she's so tall. She's going to be so tall. We all know she's 20 inches at birth and so forth. So, you're going to have to look out for that because people are going to just think she's so much older and then, kind of letting me know that, I can't look bad. Gotta make sure that
those appearances.
Maxine's always very well behaved and seemingly more mature than she should be. And my reaction to that was just, again, deer in headlights. Mm-hmm. And then, later on, I would find out about something that was going on at school that just wasn't right. Mm-hmm. And I think any really, I want to say, kind of thinking parent would have just reacted like, well, wait, that seems like bullying to me, and I should intervene. And, and I did, but still it was kind of me going like, I don't really quite know what to... Anyway, looking back on those kinds of incidents, I started to think about, well, how was I raised? Mm-hmm. And I was raised in a kind of kids or furniture kind of way.
Oh, yeah, me too. Seen and not heard.
Right. And so a lot of the tools that we access as parents, and I read all the books, Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought that I had educated myself as much as I possibly could prior to having a child and throughout the early years. So much of our childhoods impact how we parent. And I think that in this show, we've talked a lot about how kids are raised, very strictly and in an authoritarian way and rules and all that kind of thing. And then as parents, those people have to try to counter that by just kind of stepping back and instead of wanting to just interject. For those of us that were raised in more emotionally neglectful circumstances, it really is a task to develop those tools, and it's just a tricky thing. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that would be a topic for the future for us to...
Absolutely.
It's harder to talk about the things that aren't happening than it is the things that are obviously in front of us.
Right. I totally get that. And Mandisa, sounds like you do too?
Absolutely, I do. I was raised in a very, very high emotionally tempered household, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And so where the actions were more of, act first, or rather hit first and then ask questions later. Mm-hmm. And I became very sensitive to that. Right now, I find myself, and when I mentioned that I have a bad case of misophonia, that I have, that I have sensitivities to certain noises, I realized that part of that may trace back to my childhood, and also I find myself being very careful about how I try to handle it. And I do try to think first before I just start reacting, which can be, very difficult at times. But it has been very helpful for me to have been able to analyze and reflect on my childhood so that I don't repeat the same mistakes. And also, if I see certain characteristics in my children, I know how to at least handle that and handle it from a place that's relatable. I try to talk to my children and not at them. You know, I try to treat them like they can understand. And, it's interesting that you said that, that someone said that, you know, that your child may be an adult, you know, before their time. But it's like, in some ways, it's good for them to be aware of certain things, and they don't have to lose their childhood in the process. But it is good for them to be aware of certain things, and so that when they get to the age where they can start at least processing it and learn more how to, you know, handle and make certain decisions on their own, then they'll be better prepared for it. And so, yes, I think that, and this, I think many of us are still this is still very recent that we're dealing with, you know, these old notions of what, you know, parenting and you know, a child's place should be.
Right.
So it's still very, very, very new, and trying to navigate that is something that we're still in. It's still a developing phase for many of us. So I think it's really good for us to, you know, to really start, like you said, we talk about that a bit more, because I think many parents get to this stage where they feel like they don't have to learn anything, and that's
no.
That's never true. I think more of it, a lot of it is about us and how we handle it, as opposed to in addition to the children.
Right.
So a lot of it is us checking ourselves more than anything else.
Right. Mandisa, let's see. It's we're going to take another call here because we're running out of time. And this is Nikita from the Ukraine, and she has a very interesting question, mostly because of context. She's wondering about parenting in a very, very religious country, and she's not just in a religious country. She's in the Ukraine. So here we go. Nikita, this is Claire. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And for the record, I am a male.
You are a male, and I messed up, and I'm so sorry. Mandisa and Janet are here with me to answer your question.
Hello. So my question is, how can you raise kids to be non-believers, especially when they are growing in the atmosphere of belief in general, and so belief of some sort? I have a story too, like the previous caller. So my relatives are prominent members of some New Age Protestant or Pentecostal cult. They are raising their kids to be very, very religious. They isolate them in some degree from knowledge of lots of things, like they banned Harry Potter in their home. They can't play games. They can't watch some movies because there is magic in those movies, and magic is wrong somehow. I don't have kids myself, but I don't want them to be raised like that, and I just hate seeing that how they raise their kids. I don't want them to interfere with my kids, like to my family. I don't have kids yet, right? But when I do, I want to protect them from this influence. They can't convince me in their bullshit. I'm just not buying it. But for the kid, it's kind of hard to decide on what to believe. And kid is unprotected. He's a blank slate, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So
Very vulnerable.
Right. So Janet, you want to?
I was, if I can just shamelessly peddle my book, I wrote, when I wrote Breaking Their Will, I dedicated it to children who were denied the right to question. And I think that's some of the pain that you and others feel when they see that children are being raised in such a way that basically many of their child development needs are just being shoved under the carpet, being replaced by religious ideology, which is a form of emotional abuse called exploiting. The only reason I point to the book is because I think it's helped many parents and survivors of religious child maltreatment just understand what's going on, how it's harmful to children. I do spend a little bit of time in giving solutions for how to counter it, but for the most part, it's really just explaining how child abuse and neglect manifest themselves in a religious environment. It's just sort of help to give folks some meaning behind that, so that they can understand a little bit more about what's going on. And it has been helpful, I think, for some people to just then know how to counter it in the particular situation the child is in.
Okay, Mandisa.
Okay.
I think that going back to this one is very difficult, because for me, I just think that it can be very, very. I know for my kids, I basically, since I was raised secular, for those who aren't aware, I mean, my mother took me and my brothers to the library. We basically did everything else except go to church. And so for my kids who are dealing with, some religious influences through their classmates and their friends, I find it very interesting that I recently went on a class trip. I chaperoned a class trip with my youngest, Miles, again. And one of his classmates his parents were Muslim, because he said he couldn't eat pork. But he did say that he was very interested in the Darwin theory of evolution. And so he said he was saying that as he was, they watched The Amazing World of Gumball, but he did say that he was interested in that. So to me, the kids tend to get it more than the parents do. It's just, unfortunately, having those religious influences can make things a bit difficult. And of course, you as the adult don't want to be, you want to be careful with what you may say to someone else's child, because you don't know what they may or may not say. But I do think it's good to gauge, if how a child may interact with you, if they may seem, interested in some things you have to say, without just coming out and saying that religion is crap, as much as we would love to do that. But kind of navigating that and being mindful of what we say. And also, I do advise for my children to know that, their classmates have different beliefs. It's okay. It may be okay to talk about those things, and sometimes it may not. Most of the time, they just want to have fun, and they just want to they just want to talk about some of the things that they're interested in at that age. And hopefully, the parents aren't being ridiculously strict to the point where they are, where they are prohibiting that. And that's just going to be a matter of being able to gauge that. The more if you have children and interacting with other people and their kids, it's really going to be a balancing act there. And for us, we have to be more aware of that. And it can be a bit challenging, it can be a bit tough, but we'll just have to do it.
Yeah. This comes from reading Dale McGowan and going to his seminars back when I was learning how to be a mom without religion. Asking questions, pointed questions, or asking them what they think about things. And then if they ask you your opinion, then you can be forthright. There's nothing wrong with saying what you think. But
you're talking about when he's talking to children?
When he's talking to the children, right. Children, they are suggestible, and religion can be very appealing, but they also want to know answers to stuff. And if the answer is always something simple or even something scary, God or hell or what you even said there, we're worried about magic and so forth, that's something that you can definitely gently push back against by saying, well, actually, I'm pretty sure that Harry Potter is just kind of a fun book. And I read it, and I'm not going to have lunch with the devil today, and so forth. It's a process. It's not all done in one sitting. It's done over many, many interactions, and you can have an impact. I mean, I think
so
everybody
too. My biggest concern in situations like that is that children will feel unsafe in their home, and they don't know that it's something that they're not aware of their feeling of unsafety because they're just so used to the environment being what it is. But what you can be for them is kind of a beacon of safety, just by like Claire is saying, being the person that actually wants to listen to their ideas or whatever you feel is natural. That then you can at least you can't control, unfortunately, unless you see that there is abuse and neglect, and that is another reason I pointed you to breaking their will. In that situation, then you have to decide whether you want to report something or not. But if it's just more of a situation where you feel like it's just unfortunately sort of an ongoing negative influence, at least you can be the person that those children can look to feel safe.
You can ask questions of Nikita. He's going to answer the question with real stuff.
Flexing their
you
intellectual
can
muscles.
Right.
So that'll be meaningful to them and provide balance.
I hope that helps. We have 3 other callers that we want to get to, actually 2, before we end the show. And I thank you so much for calling. Do call back and let us know how your program is going.
Okay, sure.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so next we're going to do Mark from Indiana, who wants to share some experience as an atheist parent with 4 children. Okay, you have my admiration right there. Okay, Mark, can you hear us? You're on with Mandisa, Janet, and Claire on Parenting Beyond Belief.
Hello, how are you all?
Oh, I'm great. How about you?
Great.
All right. First of all, congratulations on the new show.
Thank you.
Glad to see you guys on.
Thank you.
I think
Appreciate
the show will be really beneficial to a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. Be sure to subscribe.
I will.
Right.
So just a quick story and then a question for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm atheist. My wife is a believer, but she doesn't formally practice any kind of religion. She just believes. I've shared with my children my views on religion, but I haven't, imposed my view on my kids, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
I've kind of let them, ask their questions. They've even gone to church a few times with various families in the neighborhood and things like that. My oldest daughter is now 20, but when she was younger, about I think 14 or 15, maybe 16, she did have a friend who was in a religious family. Her friend's father, I believe, was actually a preacher in one of the local churches around here. They had been friends for almost their entire school year. But then towards the end of the school year, her friend told my daughter that she was going to be going to a different school, a Christian school, and that they can no longer be friends because even though my daughter had gone to church with them and stuff a couple times, she wasn't religious.
Right.
And her parents had actually advised her to break off the friendship.
Oh dear.
When this happened, her friend actually handed her some religious literature dealing with abstinence and remaining a virgin and why God wants you to. And even though, my daughter at the time was not sexually active or anything like that. And so when my daughter and her other friend, because she kind of split it off with both of them, when they related to me the story, I kind of didn't know what to say. I was like, the only thing I could really say was, well, I'm really sorry this happened to you, sweetheart. If you want to talk about it, I'm here for you. Things like that. So my question to the three of you would be, what advice would you give to a parent who has a child that loses a friend because of their or their family's religious beliefs?
I would take a cue from my friend Katie Malinsky, who has taught me how to handle a lot of these really hard things. We put all of our stuff on our kids pretty easily. And the first thing is to check in and say, so this happened. How is that feeling? How are you dealing with that? And they may say, well, it's okay because I've got Susie and Johnny and all these other kids, and she really, maybe we were best friends, but blah, blah, blah. Or she may be despondent for days. And finding out where she is on that spectrum is important, because if it's not a big deal to her, there's no need for us to foist all of this deep and heavy meaning on it. But if it is a big deal, it is our job to be that safety net that they need and help them digest what's happened and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And that's where I would put what to do in that case. Ladies?
It really makes me think about when my child lost a pet or a loved one, a grandparent. When you lose someone from your life like that, it's there's a type of mourning that happens. There's grief, and I think I would just see it in the same way as if it was almost like a death. Mm-hmm. And so I know that when that has happened in our family, sometimes it's helpful to perform rituals, sometimes just to write a letter that you may never send to the person, or talk about what the person meant to you. It's kind of similar as you might, if there was a death, and it really there very well could be grief there that just has to be attended to.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a teachable moment, because no matter where you are in life, people break off relationships for all sorts of reasons, and it's one of those things that we all have to learn how to cope with. It may not be religion, it could be any number of things, but Mandisa, what do you think?
Well, part of me would just want to go and just give that parent a piece of my mind, or just curse them out, because clearly it is a parental influence there that has come in between the friendship of these, of these kids. And I just think that is just so, even as teenagers, we've gone through our changes, but something like that just really sounds like such a strong parental influence that, they are, the other child is being forced in this situation. And I would really want to, tell the adult off, but that might be a bit
That's kind of what I really wanted to do, but
yeah.
I've been to their house before, but I knew better than to drive up and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's not a situation that can be changed.
I know, but it is so tempting, because it's like, oh my gosh, you are really hurting these kids. Mm-hmm. You really are. But the best thing I would agree with Claire and Jan would just be to really offer your support, for your child, and just reassure them that, there is nothing that they did wrong.
Yeah,
there is nothing that your child did wrong. that is not on them. And even though it may feel like it right now, that she or he is still a very good person, and that they will find other friends, even if, and it's okay. It's okay for them to hurt. It's okay for them to be upset. It's okay for them to process it. And maybe one day, the child may come back. Maybe they may realize that they made a mistake. You can only hold out so much hope. But definitely reassure your child that they are not at fault here.
Yeah. And I would ask, make sure she doesn't write off anybody who is religious as a potential friend. I have a friend that I've known since we were both in diapers. She is deeply religious, and I am clearly deeply not. And we're still great friends. We get together, and we've known each other for more than 50 years. So
Right.
religion doesn't have to be that way, but it certainly can be, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I've kind of expressed to them that, I've always expressed to them it's okay if they believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to condemn them for it.
Right.
And that's what I try to imply for them to treat others as well.
Right. Yep. I hope that helped.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your call, Mark. I really appreciate it.
That's an important issue.
Hey, I appreciate
very
you
much.
guys too.
Right.
You have a great night.
All too
Okay.
common. You too.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay. And now, Nicholas wanting to know about evolution. Oh, this is my favorite thing. Nicholas, did you call just because I love evolution? This is Claire on Parenting Beyond Belief, Nicholas, and you're with Janet and Matisa. I'm sorry, I'm a little silly. Hello? Nicholas?
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Did you have a question about evolution, it says?
My question is that should evolution be a very reliable source to tell us basically the origin of our species? Should it be reliable? Should we trust it?
Yes. I mean, I'm an evolutionary biologist. I have a PhD in biology, and so I'm going to say yes. Evolution, nothing makes sense except in the light of evolution.
Do you have any question that relates to parenting per se?
I think he dropped himself. Okay. That is cool. All righty. So apparently he was off topic, knew it, and disappeared. All righty. So, but I had to get in my plug for evolution. All righty. Next, we've got somebody named Austin who is in California. Let me see if I push the right button here. Austin?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm coming from the Atheist Experience, actually.
Oh.
But I hung on and enjoyed the conversation.
Great.
Thanks
really
for being
happy,
here.
Yeah.
Actually.
Do you have a parenting question of some sort?
Well, yeah, it related to it. I wanted to talk about atheism, basically. But throughout this call, I've been listening for 2 hours, 2 good hours, I should say. And this is pretty interesting. What I want to say is this. Unfortunately, we have created a society where the further we advance the knowledge of psychology, the more we damage our kids, because the advertising system utilizes it immediately. We've created a situation where parents are working, kids are growing up in front of the television. We create consuming sheep as a formula. And this is what happens in an oligarchy. This is what happens with $150 billion in one person. I don't want to keep going with this, but do you see what I mean? There's a problem here that, unfortunately, science is working against us. And it's a little deeper than that. We can address a lot of issues, but until we address the real thing, religion ties into this, because the advertising system uses religion as well.
Yeah. But
when the goal is to breed consumers, unless we change things from the roots, we're going to be damaging our children systematically.
Sure. Austin, I agree with at least what you're saying so far, but we really want to take calls from people who are asking about parenting issues specifically.
Sure.
You might want to call into Talk Heathen or maybe even the Atheist Experience with these ideas, though. All right?
Yeah, I mean, thank you.
Thank you so much for your call, Austin.
Sure.
Okay. And let's see, this is Charles, who is in Maine. Charles, can you hear me?
Yes.
You're on with Claire and Janet and Mendisa. What is your question?
Oh, thank you, ladies. Excellent. Pleasure
Hi,
to be
Charles.
Here. Not so much a question right now. I just told that we're talking about indoctrination and the youth through many different forms of and backgrounds of information. One being religion, absolutely, in particular. However, there's definitely a problem in the educational system where that is also an indoctrination system.
Yep.
Me, myself, becoming a father recently, I've noticed through my past how much more intelligent I became after high school and not even really applying myself to a formal college of any circumstance whatsoever. Here's the problem with science is that we're not using our observational science. We're not applying that to science as we should be. If I could direct the attention of your listeners to J_Tolan_Media1, that's a page on YouTube. There's observational science there that any child could see that there is no curvature of the Earth, seeing as it's an infrared and we can get past the haze of clouds, and air pollution.
Yeah.
So the problem is that children are being indoctrinated on a daily through all forms of things. And I'm not saying God is there, but I'm also not discrediting the thought that God may be there.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Absolutely.
All righty. I really appreciate you calling. And
you're going to cut me off because you know that I'm speaking the truth. And your listeners
no, because you're not asking
some of your listeners,
you're not asking a question about parenting.
Okay. So it is parenting and indoctrination. I was told when I called, how do you feel about indoctrination in children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, we can talk about that.
I would like to know, what is the root of atheism? Because again, I'm on the fence right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I come from a religious background. My father was born Catholic. He was introduced to Latter-day Saint Mormonism before I was born, and it was just really funny that the reason why he got involved was because the missionaries that were speaking to him.
Hey, we're getting a little off topic again.
Well, no, we're not, because this goes from fatherhood to parenting to where I am today. So we're not off topic, because parenting is everlasting until the end of time and mankind. And parenting is the most important thing for the future of mankind.
So I could say something about indoctrination, if that's okay.
This is her area of expertise.
Please do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. There's actually a name for it that clinical psychologists use, and it's called exploitation. There are 4 forms of emotional abuse: spurning, isolating, terrorizing, and exploiting. I didn't fully understand what exploiting was because, I was thinking like child labor laws or what. I believe that religious exploiting of children is the most common form of emotional maltreatment. And if you think of it like someone is living their faith through a child, then you can see how this manifests itself over and over and over again. And oftentimes it's really hard for people to identify it unless they understand this particular form of emotional abuse. So indoctrination is an example of that, and it's a failure to address a child's individual development needs. So,
so right. I mean, so indoctrination.
It's unhealthy.
Okay, so there's many forms of indoctrination, is what you're saying. Okay, so I want to get back to the topic of the indoctrination of children through the school system, where we are taught the history and it may not. And we all know that history is written by the victors of wars and other things, right? So we don't really know if the history is correct now. So we're taking second-hand, third-hand, fourth, whatever-hand information from people that came well before our time, passing down maybe some truth, but maybe not.
Well, the thing is that we can confirm a lot of it.
No, but we can't. Though. That's the problem. That's the problem. We can't confirm it all. We have a lot of information now in this time and age where the technology is there, where we can use our observational science, right? We can apply that to a man that went up in an airplane, 33,000 feet, used infrared camera and zoomed out on the horizon where there was no curvature and you can see beyond 200 to 300 miles.
Yeah.
Now tell me where the curvature of the Earth is, and when you go look at J Space Tolan Space Media 1, go to his site on YouTube.
Yeah.
You will see for yourself that you can't see it. Okay, so indoctrination again is religious. It's political. It's public education. It's a whole slew of stuff, and I don't know where atheism comes
Charles, I feel like I'm being kind of railroaded here, so I'm going to let you go, and then we can talk about your thing right here. Okay, thank you. Cheese and crackers. All right, so let's talk about how religion infiltrates our education system, which really does happen, and it's why I got active in atheism and secular humanism and became a very active atheist, is because when I moved to Texas, suddenly it became very clear to me that education was being infiltrated by religion. The whole State Board of Education with John McElroy and all of their ways of being very insidious and using words very carefully to infuse the curriculum with creationism, intelligent design, erasing history that they didn't like, promoting an English curriculum that actually was supposed to encourage wholesome values or something like this. It was very, very religious. And being super involved in that is where I got my start. So I know about how religion can make its way into the education system and really mess things up.
Along with racism.
Yes, and racism. Oh my gosh, yes. Well, that's kind of, they're best buddies.
They are best buddies.
Yeah.
Very often.
Right? So, yeah, and I'm thinking the Earth being flat, I'm pretty glad that's not in the curriculum personally. I'm sorry, that's kind of snarky, but really, yeah, it's just, you don't know anything about science. I'm sorry.
Well, again, it's exploitation because you have, say, a school board who they personally believe whatever, and then instead of looking at the best interests of the children, they're wanting to voice their beliefs on this vulnerable population.
Yeah.
They do not have these children's developmental needs, making that first and foremost.
Right.
And all they have to do is just consult with child development experts.
Oh my goodness!
And they would learn so much about what children actually need at various ages.
Right.
But yeah,
education should be something that helps them learn how to learn. It's not having facts stuffed down their throats, and that means that you can hopefully, instead of being told that the Earth is flat, learn how science works, learn how to read things with a critical eye, and determine for yourself whether you think the Earth is flat or not, but not send people to a particular website where it's clearly very skewed, and also to have this preconceived notion that the Earth is flat. And I am just nauseated that we are going backwards like this. What the flippity-doo-dah day? Wow. What is going on that we think the Earth is flat again? Young Earth, okay, that's really way off there. And flat Earth, oh my Lord. Mandisa, can you save me from rattling on and on about how, oh my gosh.
So I want to speak directly to the very obnoxious and rude gentleman who just called.
Thank you.
So I want to say that to an extent he's correct, that indoctrination isn't only... it isn't only religiously based. However, where he is mistaken is this idea that the public education system or the school system is somehow a worse indoctrination system than church or religion. Certainly, there is information, just like science. There, like historical data is updated. You know, we find out new information about historical events. But it isn't. I mean, first of all, there should be no parent or anyone that is totally relying on the on the education system to totally educate or raise their child. Mm-hmm. Just like they shouldn't be totally relying on the church or religion to provide morals or values. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, really, we shouldn't be relying on that at all. Because, like you said, the fact that there are religious people who, you know, will get involved with these school boards and try to put in what they want to put in or take out what they want to take out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The point is to get our children to to where they need to be in order to be able to learn and learn further. Mm-hmm. And I still think that a lot of public education, a lot of public school systems get a bad rep. Because, yes, there are some that are extremely inadequate, and that's for a number of other institutional reasons. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the basics of learning, a lot of them get it right. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of it that is actually pretty secular in nature that doesn't have anything to do with encouraging or enforcing children to just think a certain way. Mm-hmm. They are encouraging the method of critical thinking. You know, in my children's schools, you know, you have to believe in yourself. You know, there's a lot of encouragement there. Mm-hmm. And so to imply that somehow the school system is worse than church is absolutely ridiculous.
Patently.
Because there's a basis of learning and there's a foundation and evidence there and verification.
Right.
In religion, there's nothing like that.
Right. Totally. Oh, my gosh.
I do want to push back on one thing that I feel the need to say, having researched specifically abuse and neglect in religious environments. There are many different ways to teach religion, and religious organizations don't always do it in an unhealthy way. I write very often about what makes religion harmful for children, and it's not across the board. The farther you get to the liberal spectrum of things, the less authoritarian the faith community is, or a school or a faith-based school is, the better, the more healthy the environment is going to be for children from a religious standpoint. Mm-hmm. If the child is attending, say, a conservative school or is homeschooled in a fundamentalist type or extremist environment, then serious problems can result. But what we're also seeing, I'm following a few court cases. One in particular has been decided by the Texas Supreme Court, which it concerns something called the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine, which very quickly is being interpreted in such a stretched and abused way that it has essentially allowed faith-based institutions to make whatever decisions they want for children. It's called internal affairs, and they get to make those decisions without court oversight because they are faith-based institutions. Mm-hmm. This has been now something that's been decided in at least 2 court cases I'm aware of. And so you have this carte blanche that's in the private religious school system. That's where they can take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, you have children in the public school system who are more protected from harm than they are in those schools.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like we have covered all the bases here, ladies. This has been really a ton of fun. Thank you so much, Janet. I really appreciate you being here and your expertise. Right on. And
been great.
Mandisa, thank you for joining us all the way from Atlanta. I really appreciate you calling in. Right on. And
hopefully the video will be on next time. And,
right. Yeah.
Y'all be able to see me.
That would be great.
Right. That would be awesome. I want to thank Philip Gunther, the person who did the cartoon introduction to our show. I just love that. It makes me happy every time I watch that little butterfly come across the screen. It's wonderful. Thank you so much to the Colonel. Thank you to all of the people on the other side of this wall over here. Whoa! Yeah. I see Eric and Mark and Vern, and they have just made this a terrific experience. Thank you so much. They do all the hard work of actually making these shows go out to you in their many forms. Alrighty, and parenting's pretty tough, y'all. We know that, and I hope that this show has helped you in some small way, if maybe not even a big way. That would be awesome. And I hope to see you next week, and until then, go hug your kid.